Hello and welcome to yet another video. This is the fourth episode of the story in which Naruto has the Kyuubi sealed inside him, but with an unusual twist. The sealing has changed, and a new bloodline has emerged. Naruto intends to use these abilities to become Hokage and change Konoha's clans. Will he survive long enough to carry out the changes? This story is from Tongues. Please support him, her. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. Naruto woke up only to see Hinata still unresponsive. Looking to the nurse in the room, she explained the situation, basically stating she wouldn't be conscious for another week or so while her body recovers. Her chakra coils were strained to the max and needed time to repair. Knowing he could do nothing to help, and that he was needed elsewhere, Naruto performed a shunshin and arrived at the Sarutobi estate once again. Taking a quick shower, he mulled over what he was going to do that day and decided he wanted to see Temari again, and Gaara to check his seal, just in case. Getting dressed in a black t-shirt, his Chunin vest, and standard black ninja pants, he loaded himself with his equipment and was about to shunshin to his next destination, when he realized how much of a waste that was, since he was never really outside for long. Taking a few hours, Naruto looked through some books on air containment seals, eventually finding exactly what he was looking for. Taking out a brush, Naruto drew what he guessed the seal should look like, including an air containment pattern, chakra conversion pattern, and interlacing it with an explosive pattern to give thrust. Activating his level 2 Fuingen, he analyzed the seal, and found he had to make a few changes, but within half an hour, he had it down. Mentally labeling it as a flying seal, Naruto decided to complete his little idea. Taking his ironing board, which he'd never used since Ajisen had given it to him, Naruto broke off the legs, giving himself a flat board. Focusing on the bottom, Naruto projected 6 flying seals onto the bottom, and laced them to one of his favorite seals, which he named Unity. This seal basically allowed for the activation of several seals at once for a fraction of the chakra required because it amplifies chakra, similar to how Naruto's exploding tags were amplified to be more powerful. The Unity seal, placed on top of the board, glowed with Naruto's chakra and lifted slightly into the air with just a tiny bit of it. Grinning madly, Naruto took his new invention outside, leapt on it, and pumped about 5 of his merged chakra into the board, and was soon flying over Konoha at nearly 50 miles an hour. Sticking to the board with a bit more chakra, he began spinning, performing barrel rolls, and generally having a good time. Flying as high as he could, Naruto dropped a kunai, then sped down on the board at 100 miles an hour and caught it, before stopping and hovering just above the market square. The ninjas around all had one simultaneous thought: I gotta get one of those. Riding on his new creation, Naruto made his way to the hotel Gaara, Temari, and their third sibling, Kankuro, were staying. The pleasant woman at the front looked quizzically at the ironing board, but after Naruto assured her it would be no problem, she directed him to room 301, the suite on the 3rd floor where the Sand siblings were staying. Moving gracefully up the stairs, Naruto soon found himself in front of a large door, one that would likely lead into a proportionally larger room, considering all the other doors were smaller. Suddenly feeling a bit nervous and disconcerted, Naruto took a mirror out of his pouch and tried to adjust his hair so that he looked a little more presentable, but he knew this was just stalling, since his hair had proven time and again that it was completely unmanageable. Knocking on the door, he was met by the sound of a violently angry woman shouting, "Hold on a minute," followed by the sound of heavy objects hitting the ground. Moments later, Temari appeared at the doorway, sweating but grinning beautifully, and wearing no pants, just one really big shirt. Seeing him standing there, she hugged him as a means of saying hello. Naruto looked to the wall on instinct, since he couldn't look a half-naked woman in the eye. Is every girl I meet gonna tackle me half-naked? Naruto sighed. What? Temari asked when Naruto did not hug her back. Gesturing with his head down, Temari gaped and walked back in, closing the door. After a few more minutes of waiting there, wondering what exactly just happened, Naruto knocked on the door again. This time, a boy with kabuki paint and a large puppet under his arm answered the door. Looking surprised, he asked, "You're still here? She just hugged you half naked. Why aren't you dead?" "What do you mean, why aren't I dead? She seems perfectly nice. Plus, I'm gonna be her husband someday. Why would she want to injure me, if anyone, at all?" She must act differently on dates, probably why she never took you back home afterwards, didn't want you to know how violent she can be. Plus, if she wanted to fuck you, she'd probably go to your place anyway, what with that nice estate and all. Yeah. So anyway, come on in, I'm Kankuro, in case you forgot, and I know you've met Gaara. Turning around, Kankuro found himself face to face with his sister, with her fan, looking very, very angry. The reason he hasn't seen my angry side, as you put it, is because he shows me a good time and I have nothing to get angry about. However, now I get to show him what should happen if he tries something funny. The next few minutes were resound with cries of help and the sound of a giant metal fan impacting flesh and the wood of puppets. Naruto just grew slightly terrified of Temari, but the feeling passed when she turned a smile his way, and invited him to sit down. Doing so, Naruto was surprised further when Temari laid down on the couch he'd just sat on, and laid her head in his lap. "Yes, Tamarican, I'm here to see you. I didn't get to see your match. Do you think you could tell me about it?" "Yeah, sure. It was easy, I was against this really weak guy, hey." Kankuro shouted, interrupting her. "I'm not weak." Temari pointed at him, and said in her most mocking tone. "You just got beat up by a fan, no ninjutsu, genjutsu, or taijutsu involved, you're weak. That doesn't count. The only reason you won is because I didn't want to poison you. Not the fact that couldn't get close to me. Or that I deflected most of your attacks. One shot of poison could have killed you, most attacks isn't good enough against me and you know it." Seeing it time to interject, before another fight broke out, Naruto said loudly, "Let's change the subject." To Temari he said, "Do you want to go out tonight? Nice dinner, without the other two? I suppose I owe it to each of you to go out on at least one individual date, you know, to really get to know you." Temari had already agreed, happily nodding her head, and asked, "Formal or casual?" "Whatever you want." Perfect, she thought evilly. "Formal, nicest place in Konoha." Naruto gulped at the malicious smile on her face, but figured he'd be seeing a lot of those. Lifting himself up off the couch, he asked, "Where's Gaara?" "In his room, past the kitchen, second door on the left." Kankuro supplied. Walking through the kitchen, Naruto soon reached the second door, still marveling at the size of the suite and how it managed to fit in the hotel, and knocked. The door was quickly opened by Sand, and Naruto entered. The room was basically bare, no bed, nothing. Just Gaara in the center of the room, meditating from the looks of it. "Gaara. I'm just here to check your seal, should I come back later?" "No," was the only response. Moving closer, Naruto sat in front of Gaara, and lifted the boy's shirt, the red-haired boy not even flinching. Just like his own, Gaara's seal was different. Activating his level 2 Fuingen with a bit of merged chakra, Naruto found that it worked nearly the same way as his own seal. It had a similar pattern, a 4-image seal surrounding the yin-yang symbol, except with raccoon heads and one tail interlaced into the seal. On the outermost portion of the seal was an extra ring, which apparently worked so that when Gaara released the full tail, he would transform. Explaining this to the red-haired boy, Gaara stopped meditating, only listening. When Naruto finished, Gaara simply nodded, then went back to his meditation. Saying goodbye to the Sand siblings, Naruto got one last hug from Temari, who kissed his cheek, and went up to the large window in the living room on the other side of kitchen across from the hallway. Opening the window, Naruto took his ironing board, and put a little chakra in it, making it float. Jumping on it, Naruto pushed it up to 5 merged chakra, and flew off, leaving 2 odd siblings. Temari simply thought I gotta get him to make me one of those. Flying off to his next destination, Tenten's house, Naruto prepped himself for a lot of heat for missing her match, since she'd wanted to show him her ability with the sword. Dropping down in front of her house, Naruto came to a rough landing, but managed to stay on his feet. Knocking on the door, he heard the sound of soft steps, not too fast, coming. Deciding to prep himself for the worst, Naruto leaned his ironing board/flying shield against the side of the building and put one hand limp down next to his side, his other hand scratching his chest, just inches away from any place that may need immediate protection. The door soon opened, to reveal a rather sweaty Tenten, who looked as if she'd been training. Hoping he didn't interrupt her burning off steam, he decided to just take it easy. "Hey Ten-chan," Naruto said cheerfully, waving his hand. "Ah, Naruto-kun. Wasn't expecting you, especially after you skipped watching my match." Sorry?" Naruto responded, sheepishly rubbing his head. "It's okay, I know you were just trying to help Sasuke. Still, can I show you my sword?" Yeah, that sounds great." "Oh, and for the record, I know about your date with Temari tonight. She told me not to try anything funny, seeing as she seemed to know you were coming here somehow." "Odd. I didn't tell her, probably saw where you were headed on that. What is that flying thing anyway, and why are you carrying around an ironing board?" Naruto picked up the aforementioned item and took her by the hand outside. Once outside, Naruto stood on the board and activated it with chakra. Floating just above the odd Tenten's head, he kneeled down, and while still pumping chakra into the board, began explaining his seals. Adopting his schoolteacher persona once again, he began. "It's quite a simple concept actually. Objects move in 3 dimensions, up and down, left and right, forward and backward. That is what these seals supply. The ones at the front and back are just that, forwards and backwards. The ones in the middle are up and down, and the ones on the sides are left and right. Of course, it helps if I lean to one side, but mainly, it's the seals. As for what they do, they each absorb my chakra, convert it to the wind element, and then supply thrust, equal to my force of gravity or greater, in the given direction so as to move me. The seal on top," Naruto dropped to the ground again to show her, "is interlaced with the 6, so that I can pump my chakra into it and it will give the appropriate proportions to the needed areas. By concentrating on the ratio of my chakra to the seal, and in which of the quadrants I am pumping it more, I can control its direction, and thus my own. It's the same concept as Temari's wind attacks, forced wind production, except in this case in a concentrated space so that it creates a constant flow without releasing the energy. Get it?" Of course, most of what Naruto had just said went over her head. She got the gist of it, and nodded dumbly. Remembering how fast he'd been going when he got up to her house, she'd seen through the window, she asked what would probably be on most people's minds rather soon. "How fast can you go?" "I dunno, I used a constant flow of about 5 to get up to 100 miles per hour or so. With my chakra store, that's probably most of yours though." "It's not really the most practical of inventions. I'm willing to bet anyone with lower than a jounin stores could actually use it effectively without the drain." She looked disappointed, but soon got a devilish look. "Think you could fly us into town?" Naruto had been expecting this as soon as he'd landed again. "Yeah. Just grab onto me and hold on tight. I don't think you can attach yourself with chakra. The amount of mine running through the board would disrupt either your flow or mine." Eagerly, she grabbed onto Naruto, who then began to lift off. At about 50 feet up, he applied about 2 and shot off at approximately 20 miles per hour. Upon turning around and seeing her disappointed look, Naruto upped it to 5, and her shriek of surprise at the sudden wind increase, whipping around her, along with the fact she was now gripping Naruto much, much tighter, was worth the temporary deafness. Reaching the market, they touched down and Naruto pried Tenten off himself before they made any more of a scene. Looking around, he'd noticed she'd directed him to the clothing district. Groaning, Naruto was about to launch off again, when Tenten suddenly whirled him around to see her. "And where do you think you're going?" "Not shopping." Trying to leave again, he found himself unable to remove his eyes from her now fearsome, yet beautiful brown eyes. "Oh no, you don't. I'm taking you to get more clothing than just tank tops. Temari said she wanted you looking nice tonight, and I intend to do just that, so yes, we're clothes shopping, as your punishment for skipping my match." Then, leaning over, she whispered in his ear, "And if you're a good boy, we may stop by the lingerie store and I'll let you judge what clothing you'd like to see me in." She led him by the hand to the next store, Naruto unable to get out a word without stuttering, and blushing all the way. I eyed. Let's just. He silenced himself when he found nothing to say, and just let himself be led along. 2 hours later, it was now about 1 p.m., and Naruto was exhausted. Tenten had finally let him go, without taking him to the lingerie store, and all it had taken was for him to pay for some customization to be done quickly to a suit they'd found in the first 5 minutes. After waiting an hour and a half, they needed a little more done, then they were done. However, the entire time Tenten had spent window shopping other things nearby. Making a clone, Naruto sent the suit home, then went off to find his main focus for the day, Shino. Aliera and all of Team 8 were practicing at the normal training ground, having just finished their lunch break. Naruto arrived just as they were about to start on drills again, and merely tossed open his library for them to use, if necessary. Aliera, having seen it being built over Naruto's time at the academy, was very familiar with it, and set to work on Kiba and Hinata with it, Hinata throwing Naruto a timid glance before going off with the rest of the team, excluding Shino. Turning to Shino, Naruto started in on his working with the boy. "There are several parts to being a chunin. Best first of all, you must be a leader. For this you need the tactical mind of one, so for that you must read this." Naruto pulled out a scroll and unsealed a book labeled The Journal of Four. Tossing it to Shino, the boy caught it. Naruto quickly explained. "That is a book written by a jounin and his team of genin, or well, the equivalents to that back when this was written, created by them for the purpose of guiding one on how to be a team player and a leader. I myself have read it, and trust me, that journal is probably most soldiers' best friend for dangerous journeys." Secondly, Naruto stated, switching into lecture mode. "You need to be stronger, as you will be in charge of others' safety you must be able to protect. I won't tell you the rest of it, but you have to be stronger. For this, I'm giving you the gravity and healing seals back, this time to last for the month, and I will be teaching you in your element. I may not be the best at Raiton Jutsus, but I'm no pushover. Now, let's get to work." Applying the seal, Naruto proceeded to show Shino the first jutsu he'd be learning. Raiton, Lightning Shield no Jutsu. A cyclone of lightning spread around Naruto, not obscuring him from view, but seeming to make a nearly invisible shield. "Go ahead, throw a kunai." Complying, Shino tossed a few kunai at him, just to have them struck away by seemingly invisible bolts. If Shino was shocked, he did not show it. After working for another few hours, Naruto found it about time to head home and get ready for his date. Deciding to get home the easiest way, Naruto just took his ironing board, which he'd had to explain to Team 8 as well, and used 3 quick shunshin to get home. Hopping into the shower, Naruto took some time to make sure he was perfectly clean, then got out, dried himself off, put on some cologne, and got dressed. The suit was pretty straightforward. It was black with a white dress shirt underneath, and a little tight on his muscles which, despite his age, still managed to grow some. Only 13, Naruto pulled himself into the pants, dark black slacks, and put on his tie, a dark red Armani. Fastening it after little trouble, Naruto combed his hair into a reasonable neat state, having used some conditioner that Tenten had gotten him once to make it manageable, and putting on his black dress shoes, Naruto was off. Using Shunshin instead of the flying board, Naruto kept his clothes relatively clean, without disheveling them, and arrived quickly. Knocking on the door, he was quickly met by the sight of Temari in a tight red dress, almost outlining her figure, and with her hair down instead of in her usual 4 ponytails. She was wearing red gloves, one of which she quickly wrapped around one of his arms, as she led him down the streets of Konoha. 15 minutes later Naruto and Temari were at the front of the most fancy restaurant in all of Konoha, the Hokage Cuisine Palace. The restaurant had been there since the founding of Konoha by the first Hokage, and all but the 4th enjoyed eating there, the 4th apparently preferring ramen. Getting seated shortly thereafter, they were given the menus and Naruto's mouth would have dropped at the prices, but remained in place, knowing he'd had some tough missions lately and could easily pay with a check, even if it wiped out some of his savings. After ordering, Naruto and Temari began chit-chatting, before arriving on a more important topic. So, Tamarican, after you leave, when will I see you again? I'm not sure. Definitely not until I make Jounin, unless I get a job like ambassador or something. Though that would mean lots of traveling back and forth, and the only thing I can think of worse than leaving is to have to come and leave again multiple times over. I suppose. I'll wait for you of course. I have Hinata, and Ten, but I really like you too, so don't go off getting any ideas while you're in Suna, okay? Heh, I couldn't if I wanted to. You're the only one for me, plus no one gets near me, because, well, I wasn't exactly a prime catch as a relative of the psychotic killer of sand. Thanks again for helping Gaara. Seriously, don't mention it. If you keep thanking me I'll die from saying, you're welcome. Now, well. Sensing he'd wanted to ask something, she caught his eye and just looked attentive. Do you think we'll get any, alone time before you go? I mean, I won't be seeing you for a while, I want to know more about you. Wondered when you'd get around to asking me. But then, a date is a good timer to talk about that, isn't it? Here, let's see. The rest of the evening was spent talking about their lives, exchanging stories funny or not. Leaving the restaurant, Naruto felt 120 poorer, but richer than ever in heart. Reaching over, he put an arm around Temari, and to respond she just leaned against him, despite the fact that they were nearly the same size, her being a little bit taller. Getting to the door, Naruto was about to leave when he felt a tap on his shoulder. Turning around, he'd expected to get a kiss. This is how most of his dates ended and he'd never understood the significance. Instead, however, Temari was motioning for him to follow. Walking into the woods a little ways, they sat down on a blanket sheet had stored out there. In a clearing looking over a small lake, they watched the sunset, the reds, orangers, yellow, and eventually pinks and purples sunk into them, the colors burning with passion, then glowing with the softness of the night. As the first stars began to light up to the young couple, Temari looked over to Naruto, who soon looked over at her. This is the best time I've had in a while. Thank you. No problem. I had fun too. Somehow Naruto had made even that casual comment sound romantic, and soon they were entranced. Leaning over to each other. They were about to kiss when suddenly something wet and yellow struck a nearby tree. Rounding on the intruder, Naruto heard a familiar voice shout, dynamic marking. Kiba. I'm going to kill you, Naruto thought, looking over at Temari. Unless Tamarican does it first. Temari was fuming. She was about to do something, when she noticed the brown-haired boy was already gone, and she didn't know to where. Pick this up sometime else? Naruto asked. However, passion still burned in Temari's eyes. Looking at him, she had a devilish grin on for a second before she had him pinned to the blanket, his arms above him, holding him in a kiss. Now. She meowed in a cat-like voice. Naruto would have resisted, but he could see down Temari's dress a little ways, and they were still bouncing from the force of Temari's strike. Seeing his eyes path, Temari dove in again, catching him in a kiss. The got up and helped him up. I suggest you see Tenten sometime soon. To my knowledge she's the only one you haven't taken on a date alone yet. How do you know that? We're going to be your wives someday, we've got to share some things. Naruto merely shook his head in mild frustration. The evening ended on a good note. 3 weeks later, the last 3 weeks of Shino's training had gone smoothly. The boy was now up to 20x, about 640 pounds, and was working at normal speed. He'd learned several lightning jutsus, as well as some earth jutsus to help his bugs, as well as some new clan jutsus. Along with that, his control had improved and Naruto had nothing left to teach Shino that he could learn in just a week. Thus, Shino was to spend the next 6 days working on his techniques, mastering them, and then take a day off before the exam. Naruto, however, just had a week of free time, which he would spend training with his sword. Earlier in the week, Aliera had started training him. Flashback no jutsu, Naruto. Aliera called, after just sending Kiba and Hinata home. Yeah? Naruto responded, looking up from the technique he'd been showing Shino. Wrap it up and get over here, I have something to show you. Okay. Naruto looked to Shino. Keep practicing, now head on home, I'll see you tomorrow. Shino nodded his head in confirmation, then left, and Naruto walked over to Aliera. What is it? The blonde Chunin asked. I'm gonna start teaching you in the art of kenjutsu. I know you already know how to use a staff, but a sword is a very different weapon. Read up on some styles if you can, but there aren't many for a sword the size of Ki. As if noticing its name, the sword on her back let off a pulse of green light, which still sent shivers down Naruto's spine. Nevertheless, he was excited. Really? I thought you were joking, I'm gonna get to wield Ki. Yes, once you are Hokage. It is too powerful a sword to let fall into the wrong hands, so until you can protect a country with your power, you cannot wield this sword. Hey! The blonde shouted in indignation. You never had to defend a whole country. Aliera simply chuckled. Kid, you're good at history, right? Go look up what you can on the village hidden in the soul. Naruto looked confused, but didn't get to voice his thoughts before Aliera cut him off. Now, Naruto, here. Aliera tossed him a sword Ki's shape and length with a weight seal on it, currently not set to anything. I'm going to show you the basic katas, but to wield Ki she must feel like a feather to you, so pump that up to 600 pounds and we'll get started. 600 would have shocked most people, but considering Naruto was currently at 72x, approximately 2,304 pounds, Naruto felt that was underdoing it. Pumping it up instead to 1,200 pounds, Naruto began to follow her through the katas. However, Naruto soon regretted his decision, but couldn't reverse it without Aliera knowing he'd disobeyed an order on something so important. So, memorizing the katas, 1 hour later, Naruto finished. He was adjusting to the weight slowly, but figured it was for the better. Since then, after Shino's training ended, Naruto and Aliera would work until dinner, then eat, then train until 10 and go to their respective homes to sleep. End flashback. Naruto now was Jounin level with his sword, not as good as Zabuza, but because of his talent with kenjutsu he would still be a force to be reckoned with. However, Naruto noticed one main focus his styles lacked. Speed. There were only 2 attack Naruto had with his staffs that were fast, and none with his sword, so Naruto went out in search of Konoha's resident master swordsman, Geku Heiate. Heiate was usually found hanging around Anbu training grounds, waiting around for his girlfriend, but if not there, he was home or on a date with said girlfriend. Fortunately for Naruto, Heiate was at home, unfortunately, with his girlfriend. Knocking on the door, Naruto rested his now favorite form of transportation and his training sword against the house. His ironing board creation had actually become common knowledge in Konoha, and all people with enough chakra had requested them, except for a few choice candidates. Normally Naruto would want to keep his creation to himself, but the fact that really no one except himself and maybe Jiraiya could successfully make one ensured that very few would ever exist. Naruto created about 10 of them for various ANBU captains and the creator, as well as one for Kakashi, Oliera, and Asuma, all of whom Naruto had become friends with at one point. Feeling a slap on the cheek, Naruto looked up and saw Hay-8 looking rather disgruntled. He hadn't requested one, but he was a friend of Naruto's, through Oliera. You shouldn't get lost in thought like that if you're the one knocking, Naruto. Sorry. I was wondering, do you think you could show me some of your style? I'm learning one for the Zanbato. Oliera will give me some time, but my style lacks speed. I know you're the best at Kenjutsu in Konoha, you've shown me many times, I was just hoping you could spare a little time maybe. Hay-8 was pondering it. The boy had given his girlfriend one of those cool flying ironing board things, so why not? He owed the kid enough for various other things too. Sure, Naruto. Tomorrow morning at 5 a.m., my training ground, you know where to go. Thanks, I owe you one. Hay-8 smiled at that, then closed the door, and heard the whoosh of air signaling Naruto leaving. After tomorrow will be thank me or want to kill me. Well, back to work. Redoubling his efforts, Hay-8 went back to his bedroom, his girlfriend pleased and surprised by his effort, and for once she burned out before him. Next morning, now Naruto, Hay-8 addressed the blonde Chunin in his lecture voice, he'd taught at 1.2, all Jounin-do. The dance of the crescent moon, my style for the katana, is a style based on strikes faster than the eye can see meant to disable an opponent so that a killing strike can be performed and finish them off. Now, I'm sure you know all the killing and disabling points. Naruto nodded. My main taijutsu style is based around it after all. Hayate continued, so I won't have to teach you that. The best I can figure is I'll give you a scroll explaining the style and show you all the basic and mid-level katas, so that you can make your own style for the Zanbato. Naruto once again nodded in agreement, and they trained for 7 hours until lunch time, when Hay-8 took off leaving a large scroll with a now exhausted Naruto, carrying a 1,200-pound sword, who was dragging himself off to Ichiraku. However, just as he left the field, walking as he was too tired to concentrate on his board, Naruto saw Tenten. She'd probably been watching him train for a time, and making eye contact, she decided to come out of hiding. So that's what you've been doing. Practicing Kenjutsu. And you didn't invite me? The weapons specialist? Tenten sounded hurt, and Naruto had to admit that yes, he should have gone to her. It's just. She's not really strong enough to help me. She's not even really worth a spar, unless that sword changed something. Maybe. I'll ask. Tenten, I'm sorry, I know I should have come to you first. It's just, well, you're not really strong enough to help me with this. Tenten would have been fuming if what he said hadn't been true. She wasn't weak, but she wasn't Naruto. Still, wasn't part of being a good boyfriend helping the girl you love, the girl you need? Did Naruto not need her? But then why wouldn't you help me? You've barely talked to me these past few weeks, but I've seen you hanging out with both Hinata and Temari. Am I just an extra? Is that it? She was now crying, looking at the ground, her hands wiping tears from her eyes. However, she soon felt the warm embrace of the boy who was now in front of her. He was crying too, but wouldn't let go. I'm sorry, Tenten-chan, I love you, I really do. I know I've been busy, but I tried to make time for the three of you. I got caught up training. I'll take you out on a date tonight, okay? Just you and me, anywhere you want, and I'll do whatever you want to do, I promise. Tenten's crying lessened noticeable after that, and though she was still upset with him, she hugged back. Okay, but anything I want, and you're paying. I'm sorry but I need to go. I'm supposed to be training Shino now, I'm a little late. It's okay. I'll see you tonight at 6, okay? Okay. That evening, Naruto had decided that going really formal would have been a bad idea, since it didn't leave him very flexible to do anything. Instead, he put on a black-white t-shirt, and wore a black silk dress shirt over it, unbuttoned and not tucked into his black slacks. Formal, but not overly so. His hair was as manageable as he could get it, but was still spiky. Carrying his ironing/flying board in a scroll in his left pocket, in case she wanted a ride, Naruto shunshined to her house and knocked. The person he saw took his breath away. Tenten opened the door, wearing a purple Chinese dress with red stitching in the shape of a dragon and gold buttons and clasps. It was quite elegant. In her hair, which was done into a bun in the back, there were 2 sunbon needles, both dull. Her bangs hung down and hid a bit of her face, but not much. Her dress showed off some of her outline, leaving the rest to mystery, and went all the way down to her ankles. She wore sandals with red straps, also quite elegant in design. She was also wearing cherry red lipstick, and eyeliner which brought out her deep brown eyes, so deep Naruto lost himself in them. Leaning forward, he put one hand around the back of her head, then closed the distance between them, holding her to him and kissing her deeply. She blushed, but they both closed their eyes, and the moment was full of shared joy. Finally pulling back, Naruto voiced his thoughts. Wow. Ahem. Where are we going? For a walk. I prepared a picnic, I hope you don't mind. No, not at all. I get to eat your cooking, what's not to like? She smiled a genuine happy smile, and soon led him out into the woods. They arrived, ironically, in the clearing that he and Temari had kissed in only a few weeks ago. Naruto and Tent ate and exchanged small talk, but soon found themselves comfortable just leaning against each other watching the sunset. I have a surprise for you, Tenten huskily whispered in his ear. Close your eyes. Naruto complied, and soon felt his pants being unbuttoned. Being pulled down, Tenten pushed her hand over it, causing him to moan slightly. Removing a needle from her hair, she put its dulled tip a few inches above his third leg and told him to open his eyes. He did so, and fear swept his features. At this range, no one could miss, not even Tenten. What are you doing? Next time you skip out on me for a month without it being for a mission, I'll make sure I have nothing to come to you for, or any other girl for. That matter. Naruto gulped and nodded, and she threw the needle, lodging it into a nearby tree. Taking the other one out, she put it in the same tree in nearly the same place, a millimeter off. Her hair now down, she whispered, "Good," and bent down. Now between his legs, Tenten kissed his third leg once, causing it to stand at attention and then moved up. And now I'm leaving you hanging. You gotta prove you love me before we ever go that far. Pulling up his pants, Naruto said, and I'm not going that far until I'm married, so I guess we're in agreement here. I do love you, I always will. Silly, I know that, I was just kidding. I love you too, now let's just enjoy the sunset. And they did, leaning against each other, the sunset faded from red and orange to purple-violet, and they turned to each other. Brown melded into blue, and soon their lips met. It couldn't have been more perfect for either of them, that is, until a certain inconsiderate Inuzuka and his dog came by, shouting, "Dynamic marking." Naruto simply yelled after him, while Tenten wished she had her sword with her. Meeting up back at her house again, they shared one last kiss, and Naruto promised he'd take her on another date after the exams. And Naruto always keeps his promises. 1 week later, it was the day before the Chunin exams. In that time, Naruto had developed his Zanbato style of fighting so that it was at least usable, naming it Tail of the Fox to match his taijutsu style. Today, all people were either training, resting, or still arriving, but one thing was for sure, tomorrow would be an exciting day. Naruto woke up as usual at 6 a.m. The exams would be starting in a few hours, around 10 a.m., but Naruto wanted to get there early to get good seats and cheer on his future wives. However, this was not the only thought which ran through his mind. He'd promised Hinata yesterday that he would pick her up at the training field at around 8, she had something she wanted to talk about, but only in private. On that day, her usual guards would likely be at the exam, so she would really be all alone. Going through his usual routine, getting up, showering, drying, and getting dressed, Naruto decided he wanted to look somewhat better than usual. Throwing on an undershirt, Naruto then put on a white silk dress shirt, buttoning it up halfway, and put his chunin vest on over it, hanging open. Putting on a pair of comfortable faded blue jeans which were modified to hold kunai and ripped at the bottom a bit to allow greater maneuverability, Naruto looked in the mirror. He actually thought he looked rather good, and decided to go eat. Usually this early, Naruto's Hiruzen, the Hokage, would be there eating, but he'd left especially early to make some last-minute preparations. After all, not only was the Kazekage coming, but also the Raikage. Naruto made himself breakfast, just cereal with milk and fruit, then set off for the training ground. Taking the ironing board, which had been officially named by Naruto and the ANBU as a wind board, Naruto went outside and flew off to the arena at an average pace of about 30 miles per hour. Flying high, Naruto waved a greeting to an ANBU captain who flew by on his own board, made by Naruto, and continued on his way, soon arriving at the training ground. It was 7:55, so he was early. Scouting the area, Naruto sensed only Hinata, and assumed it was safe. Landing nearby, he flipped off the board and greeted Hinata with a kiss. She blushed slightly, but returned it. Sitting down, she motioned for Naruto to do the same. Complying, he sat down cross-legged and simply waited attentively as she began to speak. Naruto-kun. You know how I tied with Neji? Yeah, that was awesome. She paused for a moment, then continued. No, it wasn't. They planned to put the caged bird seal on me, I didn't win. Naruto simply looked slack-jawed. He spied on Neji once before, after receiving his level 2 Dojutsu, and caught sight of the seal. Remembering that, one though came distinctly to mind. Hinata. That's a seal I can't remove. Not without help from a summon who can destroy its power. It connects to the nervous system. They can't put it on you. They will. They said I am to be wed to you when you become Jounin, and get your bloodline as well. They. She broke down, crying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Grasping her around the waist, Naruto pulled her in close and allowed her to weep. If they want to put it on, I won't be able to stop it, I can't beat a whole clan, and I don't want to kill her family, that would make me no better than that Uchiha who killed Sasuke's clan. But then what can I do? I could go find the summoning contract for one of the animals that deals with seals, but the only one I know of is dragons, and they are supposedly a myth. Are there others? Breaking from his thoughts, Naruto noticed her crying was slowing down. Stroking her hair, Naruto squeezed her a little tighter, more reassuringly. When will this happen? Tool get the seal after the exam ends. A week after. Do you want me to come? There was another short lapse in the conversation, but it was soon filled, no. It's a clan matter, you can't, but you'll be my wife, are you sure? Yes. Naruto sighed, defeated knowing she wouldn't change her mind too easily if it really meant enough to her that she didn't want him there. Usually she wanted him wherever she was, but apparently the sealing process was some sort of secret, for her to want to hide it from his so badly. Maybe she thinks I'll use the seal myself. Probably not, I'll just drop the subject. We should go soon if we want good seats. You coming? Yes, Hinata responded more resolutely than before. Walking through the woods, they leaned on each other, making their way to the arena. Naruto took a long look at her, then said, I love you, you know. I love you too. A comfortable silence followed, each simply enjoying each other's company and warmth. Naruto once again found himself examining her figure. Today he was wearing a light blue kimono with a pattern of pink petals on it. Underneath she wore her ninja clothes, the navy blue tights and sweats like normal, but on the outside she was simply beautiful. Catching him staring at her, Hinata decided to have a little fun with him. "See something you like?" Naruto began to respond, but he was bright red, so what he said was too halting to actually understand. Eventually he simply nodded. "What then? My figure? My rear?" Hinata was having great fun. She'd only recently gotten the confidence needed to actually tease Naruto, particularly teasing him about his so-called innocence. Well? Naruto was a mess. He was blushing too deep to respond in words, but decided to get her back. Removing his hand from her shoulder, he traced it down her back to her butt and gave it a gentle squeeze. Hinata gasped, and even though it felt kind of good, she would never admit that he had gotten her. She was winning for once, and she wanted to win. Thinking of a good response, she traced her left hand from his shoulder down to his butt, and gave it a harder squeeze while she used her right hand to hug him around the side, his right hand still on her rear. This time Naruto gasped, and almost let out a little moan before he stopped himself. She was so soft, her hands, her breasts now pressed against him, and her silky hair. And her scent, the aura of womanly scent she gave off was near irresistible. Unable to control himself, Naruto felt his third leg stiffening, and was soon too embarrassed to even look at Hinata, staring at his shoes and trying to use his right hand to cover his stiffy from sight. Hinata, unfortunately for Naruto, had noticed the reaction and decided to finish him off. Win this battle and she'd win the war, for now. Giving Naruto a hard slap on the butt, Hinata giggled as it forced him to move his hands back, revealing his stiff member beneath his pants. He grumbled something about blue-haired girls being too attractive for their own good, then hit it again until it became soft enough to not be noticed again. Hinata was cheering her victory silently. However, once they were walking at normal pace again, she noticed his hand was not on her shoulder again, it was still laced on her rear. Enjoying the feeling, she simply waited until they were out of the woods to move his hand forcefully up, but that was half an hour later. Only a minute into the half hour, Hinata and Naruto were leaning on each other more, and Hinata's hand was also on Naruto's rear, moving up once they got into public. Making it to the arena, it was already beginning to fill up, even though there was still a little more than an hour until the exams actually started. Getting seats only a few rows back from the front, they found themselves just beneath the Kage balcony. Already some ANBU were arriving in the crowd, but considering the amount of people that would be there, it looked like far too few of them. Shaking his head, Naruto turned back to Hinata, and shared his observations. More ANBU will probably come when more people arrive, plus, they need to be around the village too. Good point, let's not worry about it too much then. Naruto. Don't worry about the seal. Once we are married it won't matter much, right? I mean, it's not like I'd be in danger. Hinata, you may not know, but some people of your clan don't particularly like me, or you. Hinata snorted, she knew that. He continued, okay fine, maybe you do know. Still, that means they may be willing to use you to get to me, and as long as you have that symbol, you have something on you which I intend to destroy, the clan systems which imprison people. Hinata, you are mine, I won't have them exert control over you. But I can't take on a clan, so all I can do is learn to remove it. Remove it? Is that even possible? I thought you said you couldn't. Yes, and I can't without help. I remember some documents on sealing mentioning familiars. If I can get a summoning contract for a creature that works with seals, I could probably remove the seal. Summoning? But Konoha only has one active one, and that belongs to Jiraiya of the Sannin. Even with your heritage I doubt he'll train you. True, but then, toads aren't useful for sealing. I believe I remember a scroll which mentioned several familiars, including eagles and sloths, which helped with sealing. I don't know where either is located though. I'd have to find them. I believe eagles are native to Cloud, so you aren't getting that one. The last sloth summoner was from the leaf, but he died long ago in the woods. How do you know all this? Hinata giggled slightly at his befuddled look. It always looked so cute on him. I study too. Have you ever seen a dumb Hyuga? Naruto found he didn't really have a response to that, so he settled for the non-committal, and left it at that. Hinata giggled again, but remained quiet. She leaned against him on the bench, and for the rest of the time they simply chatted. They were eventually joined by a number of ninja, including all of Team 10, including a troubled Shikamaru, an eating Chuji, and a frustrated Ino who was dealing with Sakura and Sai. Kakashi arrived as well, his nose, mask, buried in another one of those Ika books, ignoring Guy who was shouting about youth while Lee copied. Niji looked grumpy, but sat down next to Hinata. With her perhaps getting a curse seal in her way of changing fate, Niji had actually become friendly towards Hinata, and after learning where all of that came from, along with a bit of Naruto's pain, he became at least a little respectful of the two. Of course, Naruto didn't know what Hinata had told Niji, but he knew something had happened, and since the preliminaries they'd become moderate friends from the times they met when Naruto saw Hinata those brief times. Kiba and Kankuro argued about the use of tools nearby, but not too close, as Kiba still feared what Hinata or Naruto may do to him. The matches were soon to start, and though there was still a deficiency of ANBU in the stands, not much else was strange. All 7 of the contestants stood before the crowd, Genma in front of them explaining what was to happen. Soon, 5 of them were heading up the stairs to the waiting room, while Tenten and Temari were facing off. Naruto didn't know who to cheer for, since he was eventually gonna get married to them both, so he decided he would just cheer in general. Hinata liked both as well and decided to do the same. Looking down at them, Genma had just started the match. In the arena, "Hey Tenten," called the blonde. "Wanna make a bet?" "Sure, what's your offer?" the brown-haired Kunoichi called back. "Winner goes on the next date with Naruto, unless Hinata gets him first." Temari called out, smirking. "Alright, and loser buys the winner a dress of the winner's choice." Tenten called back. "Raising the stakes are we?" said Temari, raising an eyebrow. "Heck yeah, now enough talking, let's go." Tenten responded, throwing needles at her blonde friend. Naruto was just blushing up in the stands while others looked between him and the match, focusing on the match when combat began. Temari easily deflected the needles, sending them back at Tenten, only faster. Moving out of the way, Tenten pumped some chakra to the seals on her palms, summoning a pair of kunai. Running around Temari in a semicircle, she threw them slowly at her opponent. Being reflected back at twice that, Temari laughed, thinking this was an easy win. However, Tenten caught the same kunai, twirling them on her fingers to maintain some amount of momentum, and jumped above the wind blast, hurling them back twice as fast as before, essentially 4 times normal speed. Temari, unprepared for the attack, tried to create a new wind blast, but it clashed slightly with the previous one still in the area, reducing effectiveness. Dodging a split second too late, one kunai ended up in Temari's calf, the other knocked away by the metal of the fan. Pulling out the kunai, Temari threw it to the ground. Swinging her fan, she announced her attack, Futon, Wind Blade no Jutsu, chakra blades in the wind launched at Tenten, though she defended herself by dodging behind a tree and waiting for the wind to subside. Seeing that ranged attack would be of minimal effectiveness, Tenten drew her sword. Moving out from behind the tree, Tenten settled into her sword stance, ice flame in her right hand, parallel to the ground. Temari went to unleash another wind blade, but Tenten used Shunshin, draining about 1/3 of her reserves, to appear behind Temari. Dodging a kick from the blonde girl, Tenten forced chakra through her sword, lengthening the blade with ice. Bringing the tip in front of Temari's left eye, Temari dropped her fan, and raised her hand. "I surrender." Tenten bowed to both of them, then grinned. "Guess you owe me a dress, and Naruto-kun owes me a date." She returned to the waiting/viewing room, sheathing her sword, while Temari went to the infirmary. Naruto made a Kage Bunshin to escort her and make sure she was okay. After all, he couldn't miss Shino's match. In the arena, Shino was facing off against the rock Nin, Sabaki. From what Shino had seen in the preliminaries, he used more ranged attacks than taijutsu, but then, the match had been done in seconds. Genma announced the start of the exam, and Shino, seeing Sabaki finish seals way faster than any genin should have been able to, had just enough time to dodge out of the way of a large rock, about the size of his head, that shot out of the ground. Using his upped speed, Shino began to circle around Sabaki, leaving bugs in his wake which were making their way towards the rock Nin. Performing seals, Shino said quietly, "Doton, bug burial no jutsu," and in an instant, his bugs were covered in a thin layer of dirt, allowing them to hide while crawling just under the surface of the ground. Sabaki, catching sight of the bugs, determined that he must not let them reach him. Pumping chakra to his legs, he jumped high into the air. As soon as his feet left the ground, all the bugs emerged from the ground and tried to swarm him, glowing blue. Damn it, didn't see that last jutsu. Performing a kawarimi, a log appeared where he had been, and he was now behind one of the few trees. Performing 56 hand seals in just over 10 seconds, he whispered, "Doton, Earth Dragon no Jutsu." A gigantic 20-foot dragon made of dirt burst from the ground, diving at Shino. Moving out of the way, Shino's leg got caught by the dragon, which shifted direction. Breathing fire, the dragon nearly scorched Shino before he too performed a kawarimi. Landing right next to Sabaki, Shino performed 2 seals. Raitun, Swarm Darin no Jutsu. The rock Nin, unable to defend himself at such close range, was swarmed and had nearly all his chakra drained out, then channeled back into him as lightning. Using a bit of his remaining chakra, he created a shield to block out the bugs, then leapt back. Both were now breathing hard, but Shino still had a decent supply of chakra left. Charging in with boosted speed, Shino made to punch the genin, who didn't move. Creating a tiny shield of rock where Shino's punch would have landed, he blocked the punch, and kicked the genin. However, a bug clone behind the rock Nin which Shino made earlier delivered a quick chop to a point on the neck Naruto had shown him, which knocked out the rock Nin before he could react. A rather tired Shino walked back up to the balcony, while the rock Nin was carried to the infirmary. Up in the stands, all the Konoha Nin had been cheering on Shino, and Naruto hugged Hinata when the boy won. It was a good victory. The third match, and by far the most interesting to the spectators, was about to begin. Sasuke and Gaara stood in front of each other, a mere 10 paces separating them. Genma declared the start of the fight, and the match began. Sasuke began copying Lee's taijutsu, but Gaara's improved control of the sand didn't allow a hit through. The red-haired boy didn't even look fazed. Tiring of the boring raven-haired boy's assault, Gaara created some sand from the dirt around him, and pushed them into tiny orbs in the air. Shooting this orbs like kunai, Sasuke soon gained several cuts, never really being hit strongly, but not able to avoid them entirely. The match dragged on, and Sasuke was getting annoyed. Forming some seals, he announced, "Katon, Great Fireball no Jutsu." However, the gigantic ball of fire did little, impacting with Gaara's shield and causing no damage. Gaara just stood there. Dispelling his balls of sand, Gaara decided to try something different. Pooling sand around himself in an ever-growing circle, Gaara soon had half the arena inaccessible by moving on it, as it would cause the runner to be trapped in sand tentacles. Sasuke, leaping onto the wall, took his last shot. Forming for seals and grasping his left forearm, he shouted, "Chidori," as lightning began to form in his hands. His Sharingan was spinning wildly, having been active since the beginning of the match. Leaping with the help of chakra, Sasuke was about to land on the red-haired boy, except the boy simply side-stepped him, the glancing blow reflecting off the sand and burning Sasuke's left hand. Trapping Sasuke in sand, Gaara said his first words of the match, "Surrender or die." Sasuke was not one to give in to such threats, however he was desperate. "I need more power." Drawing himself up, Sasuke looked for power, any power within him, and came upon some. Drawing out his curse seal by force, grimacing at the pain it caused, Sasuke released his first level seal. Bursting from the sand, he attacked Gaara and scored a hit, making the boy bleed, and causing him to draw upon power from his seal. The mix of tainted and demonic chakra made the air intoxicating, but most people weren't awake to notice it. Most of the audience was under a genjutsu and now asleep, however all the ninja were quickly awakened by the others around them that were awake. During this time, Kakashi jumped down to suppress the seal, but a different figure appeared next to Sasuke, touching the seal. Sasuke went insane, his skin beginning to turn reddish-brown, and sped off to the woods. Unable to follow the figure as it leapt up to the balcony the Hokages were at, Kakashi just told Gaara, "Go after him, stop him if you can. I'll try to send Naruto along." Complying with his allied superior, Gaara sped off after Sasuke, using some demonic power to boost his speed. On the balcony, Naruto and Guy were fighting off various Kyuumo and sound nins, while the genin woke each other up. Naruto, taking a semblance of control over the situation, called over to the genin. "All of you, help defend the city where you can, just get out of here. Too much heavy fighting. If you can, help with the evacuation." Sensing the urgency in his voice, they leapt off with their teams to try to be useful, Hinata blowing Naruto a kiss. Naruto, on the other hand, threw a shuriken just to her side, narrowly missing her. She heard a thump noise behind her and saw a Kyuumo nin drop to the ground, still holding a kunai. The shuriken had hit him right between the eyes, killing him instantly. Hinata was frightened for a moment, but then felt better when Naruto smiled at her. She followed Kiba out, off to the infirmary to help Shino out of the arena area. Naruto, activating his Dojutsu level 1, began projecting exploding seals onto various ninjas around, blowing off limbs at the cost of about one of Naruto's chakra each. By the 12th one, Naruto decided he had spent enough time there. Nodding to Guy, Naruto sped off in search of Sasuke and Gaara. With Gaara, Sasuke had gotten a head start, and was almost twice as fast as Gaara. However, the boy had to make frequent stops to regain sanity. About 5 minutes into the woods, Gaara caught up to Sasuke and was about to attack when Kabuto, a supposed Konoha nin, popped out of the bushes wearing a headband showing the symbol of the Sound Village. Stopping Gaara, Kabuto allowed Sasuke to go on his way, into the woods. The tainted power was radiating off the boy in waves. Gaara quickly summoned his sand from his gourd, and began trying to hit Kabuto with it, but every time the sand got close, Kabuto would strike it with his hands, now glowing blue, and the sand would stop in its tracks. Kabuto soon moved in close, breaking through Gaara's sand shield by disrupting the chakra flow as he done before, and scored a solid hit on the red-haired boy's chest. The boy's healing factor quickly repaired the damage, but Gaara knew this wouldn't be enough. Accessing the full tail of power, Gaara transformed into his Shikaku state, his eyes now yellow. In a voice much deeper than normal, Gaara proclaimed, "You will not stand in my way." Kabuto, with urgency, performed his summoning jutsu, summoning his personal snake, Ekiola, a serpent not quite the size of Manda, but still quite larger. Dodging around Gaara's transformed state, the snake began striking at the raccoon, but all damage dealt was quickly healed by sand in the surrounding area. Using his tail, Gaara's Shikaku state spun and smacked the snake, creating a large gash along its left side. Exchanging blows for another few minutes, the two ninja began to tire, very quickly. A summon as strong as Kabuto's had managed to get in a few good hits, and with the Shikaku not being able to unleash its full power with Gaara awake and not insane, his overall power was really closer to that of a Kage, not a demon. The battle raged on for only 2 more minutes, until finally they struck each other, and both ninja fell unconscious. The force of the blow hit Kabuto as well, already exhausted from healing Ekiola, and Gaara couldn't hold the form any longer. Naruto came upon the sight mere seconds later, seeing Gaara and Kabuto laying there. Noticing the Sound Village headband, Naruto didn't bother to check who the ninja was, and simply shoved a few kunai into the ninja's throat, making sure the ninja was dead, then continuing on the path of tainted chakra. The power up ahead was way too strong, and Naruto was not looking forward to the fight. However, he was really the only person who could stop it. Running faster, he began to catch up to the tainted one. Earlier, Kage Balcony, the Raikage, Hokage, and Kazekage were all gathered on the roof, along with the Hokage's guard, Aliera. The Kazekage had just jumped down and done something to Sasuke, then jumped back up. Then, the Raikage used a water jutsu to coerce the two to the roof of the building, which eventually resulted in the four of them being trapped within a purple rectangular prison, formed by 4 sound ninjas around them. All 3 of the Kages throwing off their robes, the Hokage was the first to speak. Orochimaru, I should have known you'd be here. For Sasuke, I presume? Wearing black battle gear, the formidable old ninja had enough malice and killer intent in his voice to stun even Ibiki. Ku, well of course. The Sharingan is too powerful to be left in the hands of an ignorant fool like you. I will use it to gain power, and then you will see what the greatest of the Sannin can accomplish," said the man who was formerly in the Kazekage's robes. He had pale white skin and purple triangles under his eyes. Long black hair draped halfway down his back, and his tan tunic and black ninja pants were standard as they come. The Raikage stood by his side, in chain armor with a sword at his side and kunai pouches on his blue ninja pants. The greatest of the Sannin? I believe that title should belong to Jiraiya. After all, he trained the 4th, did he not? Aliera said mockingly, drawing ki from her back, which began to glow green. Ah, Pathfinder Aliera, I see. Or should I call you your real nickname, Soul Stealer? Orochimaru hissed out. Aliera was unfazed by his words. In her green battle garb, she was as ready as anyone to begin the fight. And she intended to start it up. Snake bastard. It's 2-on-2 here, you shouldn't be so cocky. Why don't you draw that sword of yours and let me get a real fight? Ku, you underestimate me. I am not so blunt as to rush into a fight without think, of course. The Raikage then spoke, directing his attention to Orochimaru. Let's finish this quickly, we have a war to win, and we're not here just for the boy. Orochimaru remained silent, contemplating what he'd planned to do. I have about 10 minutes to finish this fight. Well, if he wants to start, I'll let him. Then let us go, before we have to call off this war. Charging forward, the Raikage and Orochimaru were met by the flinging of tiles, from a jutsu by the 3rd. I may be old, but you are still far too young to beat me, student. Performing more seals, the Hokage shouted, Doton, Mud River no Jutsu. A river of mud formed on the surface of the building, trapping the Raikage, but missing Orochimaru, who moved out of the way. The Raikage, however, merely plunged a fist into the river, drying and cracking it so that it existed no more. Aliera, growing tired of waiting for an attack to come to her, charged the Raikage with her sword, swinging it out in an arc in front of her. The arc momentarily paralyzed the Hokage, who used Konoshibari no Jutsu without hand seals to paralyze Aliera as well. While this occurred, Orochimaru began fighting the 3rd. Jumping back, Orochimaru began performing hand signs, and soon 2 coffins rose from the ground, one labeled 1, the other labeled 2. Out from them stepped the 2 past Hokages, the Shodame and Nidame. However, before Orochimaru could stick in the kunai needed to control them, Aliera Flicker stepped in and cut off both their heads, removing the souls and thus the 2 Hokages, in an instant. Turning to Orochimaru, Aliera pointed her hand at him, shouting, Kenjutsu, a Morphia Meta. Once again, the bluish substance shot from her hand, however also containing all the other colors. It wrapped its way around Orochimaru and was about to enclose on him when his sword, Kusanagi, shot through it. The Amorphia returned to Aliera, re-entering her hand, as she dodged the sword flying out at her. However, the Raikage, engaged in a fierce taijutsu battle with the third Hokage, was not so lucky. The sword flew straight through his back, killing him almost instantly, the chain mail doing nothing to stop the path of the blade. Orochimaru, however, did not stop the combat. Swatting Aliera aside, he began performing hand seals. Launching a fireball at the third, who countered with a wall of water, the snake Sannin retrieved Kusanagi, only to be struck by a earth bullet made by the Hokage. Doton, earth bullet, the old man shouted again, firings over 20 large boulders, the size of a person's head, at the Sannin foe. Performing more seals, the third began launching jutsu after jutsu at the Sannin, who countered each one, and after a minute of jutsu swapping, of all elements, the entire roof was smashed, nearly obliterated. Aliera, recovering from the use of Amorphia and the smack, used her sword to stand herself up again. Pointing at Orochimaru, she announced her jutsu, Kinjutsu, Amorphia bullet, while the third announced his, Katan, Fire Dragon no Jutsu. The two attacks converged, turning the dragon into white flame, and burning straight through where the Sannin had been a split second before. However, the Sannin was not expecting one factor: the third had directed the dragon, at the last second turning it to the side with speed only another Kage could follow, let alone dodge. Orochimaru, too tired to see the attack very well, lost his left arm to the attack. The third, twirling the dragon around again, made it follow the Sannin. With great speed, nearly taking off other limbs on multiple occasions until it died out. At this moment, Orochimaru took his last shot. Firing Kusanagi from his mouth at great speeds, having sheathed it earlier in its throat, the sword went through the smoke and came out, just in front of Aliera. The sword went straight through her, the force pushing her back toward the prison wall. Contact with it setting her aflame. She was dead before she hit the ground, her heart, exposed through the hole in her chest, burnt to a crisp. Ki laid pulsing softly on the tiles of the roof. The Hokage, seeing his fallen comrade and best jounin fall, looked up with more hatred in his eyes than any other had ever seen. Summoning his staff, he charged his former student, the snake Sannin, and began desperately trying to hit him. All the chakra he'd used were catching up with him, his old age slowing him down. Fighting with a kunai, Orochimaru managed to get into a deadlock, then fling the old man off, gaining just enough time to get Kusanagi from the roof. Picking it up and blocking the staff that was aiming for his head, Orochimaru managed to fend off the old man, cutting into the staff slightly. Engaging in Kenjutsu once more, the Hokage found himself outmatched, and threw his staff backwards, allowing it to transform into Enma. Then, performing a few seals, the Hokage used the one jutsu he'd learned from Naruto well, Katan, Raiton Staff no Jutsu. The Staff of Lightning, far more powerful than any staff Naruto had been able to make, fit perfectly for Sarutobi, who began fighting Orochimaru on even ground once more. Deadlocking several times, both the Sannin and his teacher held the same thought: I must end this quickly, time is short. Orochimaru attempted to leap back, only to have his remaining arm caught by the ape, Enma, who had snuck up behind him. Using the opportunity to full advantage, Sarutobi, the third Hokage, cut off Orochimaru's other arm. However, the cost was Kusanagi, hitting him full in the chest, or so he thought. Enma threw himself in front of the sword, it passing straight through him. In order to prevent dying, the ape went back to the realm of summons as really, he was no longer in any condition to be fighting. This is the end, Sarutobi Sensei, the snake Sannin whispered, bringing his sword to the old man's staff, spitting the word sensei like the poison of his snakes. Yes, for you. The old man replied. Using the last of his strength, he created a second staff made of lightning in his other hand, no hand seals, and jammed it through the snake Sannin's chest, moving it up in a killing strike, nearly cutting the man in half. Orochimaru fell back, his heart now in 2 pieces, most of his torso scarred with electricity burns, but first threw his sword, putting it neatly between Sarutobi's 2nd and 3rd ribs. The old man died upon the sword, unable to fight the cold grasp of death any longer. The 4 sound jounin surrounding the area dropped the shield, and were about to leave when Kakashi, Guy, Asuma, Kurenai, and Enko dropped down, along with 4 ANBU and a commander. They didn't leave alive. With Naruto had to run for only 2 more minutes before he caught up to the Uchiha. He now had wings, a reddish-tan body, and his Sharingan was pulsing wildly. The seal was completely out of control, and it seemed the only way to prevent this menace from getting away would be to kill it, or seal the power. Option 2 was already nearly impossible, so option 1 would be the best choice. Sasuke turned to see who had followed him, only to grin maniacally upon seeing his foe. Well Dobe, we shall see now who has the power. If I can kill you, I can kill Itachi, right? Right? The voice rose higher on the last word, as a Chidori formed in the demon-like Sasuke's left hand. Charging with blinding speed Naruto had not expected, Sasuke put a hole through Naruto's chest. He'd aimed for the heart, but Naruto had just enough time to move the strike away from the killing point. Activating his level 2 Dojutsu, Naruto rose to tailed form 1, the single tail forming behind him, his power matching Sasuke's. Removing Sasuke's hand from himself with a burst of chakra, Naruto healed in seconds, but by that time he was already engaging Sasuke in taijutsu. Launching into his style, Naruto began to his pressure points on Sasuke's body, slowing the boy down slightly, but as soon as a point was hit, the Uchiha would make a sharp movement and retaliate. After a short exchange, the both land attacks, Sasuke punching Naruto in the face, Naruto hitting Sasuke in the chest with 2 fingers, pushing him back. Both panting, they were about to charge again when a shriek came from the trees. Sasuke! The girl screamed, her pink hair bouncing as she ran into the clearing. Somehow, even as he still attracted fangirls. Sasuke, stop. You don't want to kill, please, stop this, the girl pleaded. She was joined soon by Sai, who also looked at the boy pleadingly. Or with what passes for pleading with a relatively emotionless face. Sasuke was not amused, not would he waver on the subject. Naruto would have gone in for a killing strike then if it wouldn't have traumatized the girl, but with what was about to happen, Naruto believed he should have just taken his chance. Sasuke picked up the girl and threw her, attempting to kill her by sending her through a tree. Naruto, of course, stopped the girl in midair and put her down, but she'd already passed out. That was when Naruto heard a gurgled yell and the sound of birds. Sasuke had just driven a Chidori through Sai, his other teammate. Naruto heard the raven-haired boy grumble, not quite, as a shape started to form in his eyes. As he was removing his hand from Sai, Naruto charged him, creating a staff of lightning in his hands and beginning the Kenjutsu fight. Sasuke countered with yet another Chidori, this time lengthening it and using it as a sword, breaking Naruto's staff. Moving past the blonde-haired Chunin, Sasuke went for his target. How convenient she came to him, rather than him having to find her. He remembered his relationship with her, the events flashing before him before the final blow. Flashback no Jutsu, Sasuke-kun. Want to go somewhere with me? Like what, a date? She squealed at the thought, then calmed herself. Nervously tapping her foot, she said quietly, maybe, the blush apparent on her cheeks. They'd only been teammates for 2 weeks, and she hadn't proven entirely useless. He was actually considering it, just to get his mind off things. Sure, Sakura, let's go. The next image popped up, showing them later that evening. Sakura had gotten tired, and Sasuke didn't really hate the girl, she had been trying to get stronger, if only for him. And she's pretty, she'd probably be perfect for rebuilding my clan. With that thought, he accidentally jiggled her a bit. She stirred, then looked up at him, their eyes meeting, and she leaned up and kissed him on the lips. Next image, it was after their first crank mission, which Naruto had helped with. Sakura hated the dope just as much as he did, calling him a know-it-all and a perv when she'd walked in on her going to the bathroom in the woods, on accident of course. The day they got back, Sasuke invited Sakura out on a date, and that day they made out. Next image, their second crank mission. Sakura had a nightmare and crawled into Sasuke's tent on accident, then cuddling up for warmth. He woke up happy the next morning, the soft feeling of her again him much better than waking up alone. Next image, 2 weeks before the exams. She slept over at his house, talking about his clan and why he did what he did. Sakura agreed completely, and wished to help him. They kissed, and he felt better. Next image, the day before. They had slept in the same bed, half naked, for good luck, and both enjoyed it. Sasuke believed she was the best thing to ever happen to him. End flashback, Sasuke brought the Chidori down into Sakura's head, causing it to explode. When he looked up, his eyes had formed shuriken, the manjikyu. Focusing on Naruto, he could see all that he was, including his jujutsu. Dobe, the boy muttered, through tears, now, you and Itachi, will die. Naruto looked up, only to see black flames shooting towards him faster than could be dodged. The flames covered his body, so painful that it was as if the sun's energy had all just been focused on himself. All was black, until he faded and fell backwards. Standing in his mindscape, Naruto believed he would see the fox, but he did not. He saw before him a gigantic yin-yang symbol, one tail lit, the others empty. Walking forward, Naruto touched the tail, and felt his energy flare. Touching 2, then 2 more, he now saw 5 tails emanating from the walls, runes, and shapes. Waking up, he could have only been out for a second, as Sasuke was now. Staring at him, his eyes wide. Naruto's eyes had turned yellow, with black slits and white fiery kanji for seal in them. His jujutsu, it had changed again, but that wasn't what was concerning Sasuke. No, it was the 5 fiery tails waving behind Naruto, until 3 receded in seconds, and now only 2 were left waving behind the boy. The blonde's eyes remained yellow, and the 2 tails waved threateningly. Their power was equal, but their eyes were not. Sasuke looked into Naruto's, and activated Tsukunomi, while Naruto looked into Sasuke's and whispered one word, seal. In an instant, Naruto was sucked into a world where he was tortured by Sasuke for 24 hours, and Sasuke was sucked into a world where he could see nothing but thousands of seals covering the walls, torturous screams, horrifying images, and random blasts of energy causing him to dodge constantly for 24 hours. Both emerged from their respective hells, their minds damaged, but instantly repairing due to their power. Naruto simply looked Sasuke in the eyes again, and said 2 words the Uchiha would never forget. Sharingan, sealed. The Sharingan receded from Sasuke's eyes, a brief seal flashing in them before fading to his usual onyx ones. Seconds later, Naruto whispered, power, sealed. And with that, the heaven seal on Sasuke faded, the pattern reverting to the marks, and receding until within the seal, except not with a seal around it and an X intertwined. Sakura and Sai dead, Sasuke powerless, Naruto let the demonic power recede back into his seal, moving his eyes down to second level, then first, then back to the almost serene cerulean blue. Creating 3 Kage Bunshins, Naruto brought them back to the destroyed village, the invasion having ended and the Kyuumo Nins leaving, the Sound Nins following. Fortunately, Naruto met no resistance on the way. For days later, all the bodies had been accounted for, the Sound, with no leader, was invaded by Cloud, located right next to it, and all their territory taken. War was still declared between the two, but the political scene was becoming a mess. The Rock, Iwa, joined with Kyuumo, while Suna joined with Konoha, and all through this, Konoha lost about half its military force, the village greatly damaged, and with no Hokage in charge. Jiraiya, who arrived the day after the invasion upon hearing the news, was made temporary Hokage, and much the council's surprise, was somewhat serious about it. However, he stated once the village was back in order to a reasonable extent, he would hand over the position to someone else and leave. In 1 month's time, he would set off to find his other old teammate to lead Konoha, because Jiraiya did not want to give up the freedom of his life. The paperwork. Jiraiya hadn't slept in 3 days, reading endless reports and trying to restore the village. The ninja population was doing what it could, but the village wouldn't be fully ready again for a long time. Sifting through reports of the dead and of combat, he struck one which piqued his interest even while in his sleep-deprived state. All it said was, "Come find me." Well, Jiraiya thought, this'll be interesting. Jiraiya didn't know who the report was from, or why it was submitted when all it said was, "Come find me," but the simple fact that it had been there set the turmoil of the village aside. Of course, ceremonies to honor the dead ninja who protected the village, as well as the ceremony to honor the death of the third Hokage, would be taking place tomorrow and over the next few days. The cemeteries would get more bodies, the memorial stone would get more names, but one disappearance seemed to disturb many of the younger ninja. Looking out over the town from the top of the Hokage Tower, Jiraiya once again reflected over how much he didn't want the job, but knew there was no one else who could do it, other than Tsunade or Kakashi. Kakashi really wasn't known for his leadership abilities, and Tsunade would be hard to find, so he knew that he couldn't leave to find her until the village was relatively safe again. Until the inhabitants of his village would once again be safe from outside harm, no matter how large or small, weak or powerful. Jiraiya turned to reflecting on the one person he knew of whose importance was greater than any other. Uzumaki Naruto, the container of the Kyuubi, had disappeared after the invasion, not killed, but missing in action. The recent disappearance of Ki, Ailiera's sword, proved that he was still somewhere near the village, but with the kind of emotional distress the boy had experienced, Jiraiya truly wondered could the Kyuubi escape. Seeing an opportunity to leave the office, Jiraiya set off to find the boy. Remembering where his old student always went whenever he was troubled, he looked up to the Hokage monument. Sure enough, a tuft of blonde hair and a green glow were emanating from it. But instead of the 3 RD's head, it was coming from the 4 TH's. Jumping high up, Jiraiya landed atop the monument, looking down at a mediating young boy. With a green aura and one green tail of energy flowing from his backside. Noting the sword in the boy's hand, the old Sannin recalled something Ailiera had once told him. Flashback no jutsu, 5.5 years ago, so, you gonna try peeping on me again? An angered Ailiera asked the Sannin, who was now laying on his back, covered in bruises. No ma'am. The older ninja replied as steadily as he could. Note to self, do not peep on powerful kunoichi. So what did you come here for anyway? The woman inquired, stepping over the man and into the kitchen of her apartment. I came to talk to you about. Well, about Naruto. What is it? This is confidential, you may tell no one under penalty of death, especially if they are children. Must be pretty serious. I understand. Tell me. Jiraiya nodded to himself, as if deciding on something in his mind, then spoke. Naruto is the container of the 9-tailed demon fox, Kyuubi no Kitsune. Oh, that's all? Okay then, I won't tell anyone. Ailiera said, completely unfazed. Jiraiya's jaw dropped, but he quickly composed himself, and spoke again. How'd you know? The first day he came to the academy, my sword pulsed and found demonic chakra. From the whispers I've heard around here, though I've mostly ignored them, it wasn't hard to find out. Sure, it happened when I was young, so I don't remember much other than the roars, but just sensing it was enough for me to know. The kid is special, lucky guy being taken in by the Sarutobis, heck, most of the village likes him. Imagine if he was abandoned? Jiraiya just smiled a wide, wide smile. Someone knew the demon wasn't killed, just sealed, and didn't hold it again the boy. Then something occurred to Jiraiya. Wait a minute. How could your sword have sensed demonic chakra without being demonic itself? Oh, simple really. My sword was forged of metal made by an enchanter who was trying to control the demons. My sword steals souls, pulses, controls demons and more, but then, you knew most of that, right? Jiraiya nodded. The controlling demons bit is new, but then, maybe it's a good idea that she'll be getting close to Naruto, she can control him if the seal ever breaks, right? End flashback. So there he was, Jiraiya just standing before the boy, as he began to form the second green tail. How he was suppressing his power, so that it couldn't be felt even at such a close range, was unfathomable. The control it would require would be enormous, but then, this boy was just full of surprises. Naruto. The boy broke from his trance, the tails slowly receding back into him, the aura disappearing. He was emotionless, his face blank, his voice monotone as he spoke, slowly. I take it you are the new Hokage? Yes. And I found you. What is it? Naruto reached into his pants and pulled out a scroll, unsealing a large scroll and giving it to Jiraiya. There's my report. That is all. Leave. Wait. Do you want to talk about it? The man inquired, trying to be supportive. Leave. The boy's voice had become demonic, as he released a green tail again, holding ki before him like it would judge the course of his life. Jiraiya, seeing no reason to anger the boy, turned on his heel and left. Calling behind him, he said words which would echo in Naruto's head for a long time. You cannot live in the past. It is okay to grieve for people, but move forward. It's never too late to live your life. 1 month later, the village was repairing quickly. A flood of supplies from Suna, in exchange for access to missions to improve its economy, helped along the construction. In addition, this allowed many on-duty ninja to move to off-duty and help with rebuilding the village. Sure, this weakened Konoha for a short time, but with all the ninja in the village, no one would dare attack. However, this did mean that not other village had Konoha as a threat for a short while. The Cloud and Rock allied, and took over the Sound village and its territory, splitting it between themselves and using the ninja residing there to help create a new village spawned from them, the Dust Village. Konoha ninjas on recon missions found evidence of Cloud, Rock, and Dust building up their forces in preparation for a war it seemed, and Cloud, though at a loss because of the lack of its Yondaime Raikage, appointed its Godame, a woman who was formerly known as the Lightning Witch. After 2 weeks, Jiraiya set out to find Tsunade and bring her back, but came back a week later without her. Apparently, the woman had outright refused, and poisoned Jiraiya, leaving no trace of herself or her aide, fleeing the town very, very quickly. After recovering, the man had come back and was officially made the new Godame Hokage, since then having been hit several times by his female assistant for trying to change the dress code to something more scandalous. Still more troublesome was the fact that Naruto had still not moved from the head of the Sandaime, not even for the man's funeral, and was occasionally sending out pulses of green energy so large that they created earthquakes, slowing the progress on some buildings closer to the rock face. However, the most troubling issue was the fact that one Sasuke Uchiha had been healing in the hospital, and because of his sealed-away Sharingan and power, the raven-haired boy had gone insane and escaped, heading in the direction of the Dust Village. Several genin, a newly appointed Chunin, Nara Shikamaru, and soon after the Sand siblings, were sent to retrieve him. However, from the descriptions the squad gave when they came back, they were all defeated by either the man who apparently grew bones from himself to use as weapons, a Kagaya, or by Sasuke himself who unlocked his Sharingan in combat and gained a new kind of cursed seal, removing the old one, from the Bone Man. All of them came back in critical conditions, but it had been a week since then and a few of them were up again. The genin that were sent, Kiba, Niji, Shino, Lee, and Chuji were all awake again, but the Sand siblings and Shikamaru were still unconscious, though Gaara was likely unconscious for a different reason. It was at the 1-month checkpoint that Jiraiya finally relented and told Tenten and Hinata where Naruto was, and brought them to him, then left as to avoid the conflict likely to follow. Hinata and Tenten decided they needed to pull Naruto out of his trance, though his fearsome aura was giving them second thoughts. Naruto sat, completely nude, atop the stone Sandame's head, ki before him, and 4 green tails swishing around behind him. If it had been any other situation, the 2 girls would have been ogling him, but the tails and the hole in the right side of his chest drew their attention. Slowly, they both approached the boy, getting within 5 feet of him before a pulse of energy was released. The pulse went right through them, but caused an earthquake so powerful that they were thrown to the ground. Nodding to each other, Hinata and Tenten tensed, then crawled over to Naruto, each wrapping an arm around one of his. Slowly, his eyes opened, showing blue irises with 4 kanji for seal in each eye, all of them black. He said nothing, though his eyes began to light up, until each symbol was alight with white fire, making his eyes look like stars. Standing, Naruto lifted both girls up with himself, and simply looked out over the village. After an hour of this, the girls were about to do something, except that Naruto finally spoke. "Why is there pain?" Neither girl answered, but just looked at him with worry in their eyes. "Why is there pain, and why do people suffer? What is the reason for life, and for death? My sister. My grandfather, friends, even distant, so many died, and still so many lived. I want no more death, but I know I cannot stop it. The best I can do is to protect others from what I can stop. To live in the past is to throw away the chance to save others' lives." Naruto then went silent, and sat down again, naked as the day he was born. He did not mourn the death of friends and family, he did not dwell on such things for very long, and this made the girls both happy that he was okay, and disturbed by his attitude. At the same time, both girls hugged him, and whispered into either ear. "We're here for you." Naruto just nodded, then spoke the last words they would hear from him in a long time. "And I intend to keep you." The next morning, Naruto was gone. He had taken all of the Sandame scrolls that he hadn't yet used, as well as some scrolls of the Yondaime that a member of the council gave him, and left the village by use of a still not repaired hole in the wall, at what camera showed to be about 3 a.m. On the wall was a message to all the people of Konoha, which gave them only a clue. "The will of fire lives on. I liberate you." From that moment on, the people of Konoha only heard rumors of what the boy was doing, but he gained his reputation as the symbol god of Konoha. It had been 5 years since Naruto left. Hinata, Tenten, and Temari, who arrived just a year ago, were all living in the Namikaze compound, given to them just after Naruto left as it was his birthright. Using some blood from his medical files, they got into the compound easily, and after completing a ritual vowing their loyalty to Naruto, they were able to enter the buildings without unlocking the blood seal. Since Naruto had left, all 3 of them had become jounin, but not all were in particularly good positions. Hinata was branded with the caged bird seal just 2 months after Naruto left, and was to be married to him after he returned, though still relatively a slave of the Hyuga clan. She was abused by her younger sister on occasion, who had inherited Hinata's father Hayashi's behaviors, now acting as if she had a gigantic stick up her butt. Niji, on the other hand, was quite sympathetic, and with his and Kurenai's help, Hinata became a jounin just last year, with her own version of the Hyuga style. Involving some of Naruto's moves, her style was more fluid, and had several moves to work against other Hyugas. Niji used a variation of the Hyuga style as well, a more stiff style similar to the Uchihas which, along with his speed, could counter even Lee's strong fist in pure power. Hinata, now 18, and nearly 19, was aching for Naruto's return, knowing that he would have to come back sometime, and with the current political scene, it would likely be pretty soon. Tenten was a member of ANBU, her weapon making her almost as fearsome as Aliera had been, because of its unlocked ability to steal souls. Her prowess allowed her the recommendation for Jounin early on, just 2 years ago, and from there she became a member of the Hunternin division of ANBU, often taking missions to execute targets further away, with the hope of running into Naruto. Tenten had also expanded her style to include not just her kenjutsu, but also the use of needles, and medical jutsu, which made her excellent for quickly paralyzing a foe. She gained her reputation as the second soul stealer. Temari had not shared too much of what happened in Suna, since Tenten and Temari already knew, but Temari was just happy to be in Konoha. For the 2 years before she arrived in Konoha, Temari acted as Suna's ambassador to other countries, and because of this she saw most of what was happening around the other villages. Both Cloud and Rock had been building up their forces, and unfortunately, just last week, had begun positioning them in preparation for an attack. They looked to small villages around them for economic support in exchange for protection, and their forces were now at least 3 times the size of Suna and Konoha's combined. Water Country remained neutral in the conflict, with war on the horizon, but for the past few years had supplied Konoha, until cutting off the abundance and just reading normally just a week earlier. Making Jounin, Temari quit her job as ambassador and came to Konoha to see Naruto, hoping he had returned. She was very proficient with her wind attacks, and could have made Jounin earlier if she'd been able, but instead had to focus on work and training. Temari, Tenten, and Hinata were all sitting in a tea shop in Konoha, discussing politics. However, the topic soon shifted to what they'd heard recently about Naruto. Though, they didn't call him that much in public anymore since he wasn't around, instead referring to him by his nickname, one feared in all elemental countries except Konoha, the symbol god, or SG for short. So, anyone heard any news since last week? Tenten asked casually. She was wearing a long purple silk Chinese dress, and had her hair hanging down over it, and over the back of the chair. It reached her mid-back, soft and silky, shining with the rays of light that bounced off it, making a glowing effect. No. Hinata whispered. She was wearing a medium blue, long-sleeved shirt with her black Jounin vest over it, and black ninja pants. She was also wearing more casual blue sandals, and had a kunai holder on her right thigh, strapped on with white bandages. On her left hip she had an equipment pouch, but really she looked like a standard Jounin, just much prettier. Her hair was dark blue and reached down to just an inch or 2 above her rear. She still wore her forehead protector around her neck, but also wore a light blue bandana at her forehead, in order to cover the caged bird seal. The light reflecting off her hair and the bounce of her breasts, now at cup, was enough to make any man drool. She was stunning. Moments later Temari spoke up. Yes, I have. She still wore her hair in ponytails, but now she had just one, and her hair still hung down around it slightly. She also no longer wore battle dresses, not liking to accidentally flash her opponents whenever she used one of her stronger wind jutsus. She was currently the best wind user in Konoha, having come from Wind Country, and she helped a few other ninja out with theirs. Once, using a tornado-like attack, she accidentally blew her dress up and flashed the person she was trying to help. Now, she wore light blue faded jeans, a black t-shirt, and a tan Jounin vest over it. She had her equipment and kunai holders in the same place as Hinata, as well as a seal on her left wrist that held her battle fan, a newer one which was black, but with golden dust lining the top, making it sharp so as to cut people when she whacked them with it. Also, it now had a different pattern on it, 2 ravenous weasels circling each other, one tan, one red. Hinata eyed Temari, waiting for her to continue, while Tenten said, "What? Tell us." Temari chuckled slightly, then continued. "Well, you know how the war is coming? Apparently Rock and the other small villages have decided to back Cloud and the spawned village, Dust, if they decide to go to war." Tenten and Hinata cringed slightly at this, but nodded. Temari continued in a low voice, so that only they could hear. Well, yesterday that Hokage was murdered. Disintegrated. He was there, their ANBU followed him out of the country, he was heading in the direction of Konoha. Of course, you already know their Hokage was just a figurehead, his son really being in control. He was already announced the new Kage, their yondaime, so of course now they're gonna wait and see if he did come to Konoha. How do you know this? Hinata said, a quizzical look on her face. She always wondered how Temari got her information without going to Jiraiya. Except Jiraiya, of course. I had to pay the usual price though. Tenten and Hinata cringed. Each of them had once asked Jiraiya for information on Naruto, as he had encountered their blonde fiancé a few times during their travels. Tenten and Hinata had both asked for information, saying they didn't care what the cost was. The result was they had to kiss each other, then describe what it felt like. Of course, normally they would have hit him, but he reminded them of something Naruto had once said. I never go back on my word, that's my nindo. The two agreed to never ask Jiraiya for information again, but Temari spoke up when she saw their disgusted look. I just described what I want to do to Naruto, Volume 1. They all had blushes on their faces. They had decided that after Hinata got her first shot at the man, they all wanted to try to get him together, and began coming up with ideas. They had created 3 whole novels, each over 100 pages long, describing with imagery what they would do. Needless to say, these volumes put Jiraiya's novels to shame. 3 sex-starved women with dreams of a particularly godlike male tended to come up with rather hot scenes, their favorite of which being the one where he punishes each of them. Don't do that, we don't want him getting any ideas about us. Tenten said slightly disapprovingly. As long as you don't tell him about Volume 2 Chapter 4, we're probably fine. Hinata said quietly. All 3 of them looked around uneasily, then returned to talking about Naruto and politics. Elsewhere, just outside of the border to Fire Country, a man with long blonde hair, in a ponytail reaching to just below his shoulder blades, stood in front of the bodies of 3 rock ANBU. Pulling his sword from a corpse, he brushed off the feeling he got whenever he took not just a life, but a soul. Usually he didn't have to resort to using his sword, but he had been chased by at least 5 full squads of ANBU, and these last 3 were no pushovers. Wiping the blade of his sword, the blonde put his sword on his back, attacking it with chakra. He was wearing a t-shirt, the sleeves ripped off, and a brown trench coat over it which nipped at his ankles. He also wore ANBU pants, which he'd stolen off one of the ANBU who was nearly his height, about 6 feet 2 inches, and had 2 fingerless gloves, each with a small hole in the palm. They were specially made, composing of a steel and iron mesh, painted black, with hard bio-leather on the outside, stronger than leather but easier to form to one's hands. On his backhand, the gloves had 2 strips of leather, one bearing the symbol of the Shiki Fujin, the other bearing the symbol of a 9-tailed fox. Deciding to check his supplies, the man opened his coat, which was revealed to be covered with seals on the inside. Though no one could see it, it had a strengthening seal in the middle of its back, that made the trench coat seem akin to adamantine, a combination metal which was so strong, it was as if the boy was wearing 3 suits of titanium armor, however the seal did not increase the weight. Searching around, the man pumped some chakra into a seal, and out popped a food pill, which the boy ate. Taking off his blank forehead protector, the man took out a kunai, popping into his hand from a seal on his palm, and carved the Konoha leaf into the protector with ease, looking as perfect as the day he'd removed it to begin with. Looking at it, the man began to reminisce over what he'd accomplished these past 5 years. Flashback no jutsu, A/N, long flashback, he'd just left Konoha behind, intent on becoming the strongest shinobi possible, so that when he returned he could claim his title as Hokage and help it become a better place. The first place he intended to go was to the far south end of Fire Country. He removed the symbol from his headband, getting a blank one, so as to avoid being attacked, just being named a homeless ninja. Spending 12 hours a day training, for hours traveling, and 8 hours sleeping per day, along with not having a map. It took the better part of a year to find the place he was looking for. By that time, the blonde was at Kage level, and was known as the symbol god of Konoha, for having killed many rock nin on the border as they tried to sneak in with nothing more than exploding and power absorption seals. He had also memorized and mastered all his family jutsus, including Hiruzen and his variant of it, which allowed him to move freely without the use of kunai to place symbols, as he could do that with his eyes, and the Rasengan, as well as a few other moves. He had just begun working on the other jutsu he'd brought with him, the ones from the Sandaime Hokage's dojo attic, and had begun creating more of his own jutsus, even though his arsenal was already very large. The blonde began his work on what he believed to be the best jutsu ever to be created, as he continued training his bloodline to try to reach another level. The blonde finally came upon what he'd been looking for, a talking sloth. Moving toward the creature in broad daylight so as to make sure he did not scare the creature, he saw it talking to a small insect it had captured. "Aren't you a cute little thing? I'd hate to eat you." "Oh well, off you go." The sloth then latched onto a branch and began to climb, moving inside the tree to rest. The blonde followed the sloth, jumping up in a single bound to where it had disappeared. Leaning down and examining the hole, the blonde ninja said, "May I speak with you a moment?" "Who are you?" came the earthly voice from within. "Namikaze Naruto." "Uh-huh. Well, Naruto, what do you want?" The creature said "want" in a nasty manner, but Naruto brushed it off. "Your help, your friendship, and to help you in return. I want to be your clan's summoner. I know you are a small clan, but I need help in the art of sealing." The sloth emerged, curiosity overwhelming as the subject of sealing came up. Looking to the boy, the sloth saw his eyes. They looked like the sloth boss's. Seeing that he was serious, and that Falavora would be furious if a potential candidate was turned away, the sloth nodded. Reaching forward, he grabbed Naruto's hand, then laid a seal on the ground which Naruto recognized as a location shift seal. They both appeared before a giant tree, nearly the size of the Hokage monument itself, and looking up Naruto saw the biggest sloth he'd ever seen in his life. He was further surprised when it spoke to him, in a woman's voice. "Ah, nice to see you, Vladimir. And I see you brought a guest. Who is this?" "Namikaze Naruto, my queen." The sloth named Vladimir responded. Naruto smiled, and bowed deeply to the queen. "I am Naruto. I request to be the summoner for the sloth clan. I need your sealing abilities to help my own." Falavora reached down and peered into Naruto's eyes, seeing them, quite surprisingly, the same as her own, only in her lowest form, having only 4 kanji in each, instead of her eyes, which eventually formed 50 spiraling kanji for seal in each eye, which rotated. Deciding to test the boy's power, Falavora activated her 4 in each eye, and projected a seal at him. Naruto, seeing her eyes activated his own. He'd expected a trial. Releasing the seal that Falavora had tried to project onto him, Naruto attempted to project an exploding seal onto her. She simply waved it away, it disappearing before it could even reach her. This continued for a short time, before Naruto began to tire. He'd never had to counter and use his sealing power at the same time before, and having to do so when the seal projections traveled at nearly the speed of light, made combat like this nearly unwinnable. Naruto unlocked a 5th kanji for seal in each eye after a few more seconds of combat, making a pattern with 4 in a square shape and 1 in the middle, all burning white. Falavora upped her form to 10 spiraling seals, and began getting hits on Naruto, using underpowered exploding seals. Upping her form to 20, then 30, Naruto began to feel the pain. She reached 40, the kanji rushing to her eyes as she began projecting at the speed of light, then 50 seals. It was like 1,000 kunai were thrown in rapid succession, all of them with exploding notes on them. The explosions were so rapid they sounded like one, and afterwards Naruto just fell backwards, however his eyes stayed at 5 seals in each. Naruto awoke 2 months later, his body having been almost completely destroyed. The power stored in ki during his training helped to keep him alive, and when he finally got up, and healed completely, which took another month, Naruto was accepted as the summoner for the sloths. For the next 3.5 years, Naruto would reside within the summon realm, 7 years passing in the summon realm with Naruto aging normally, and Naruto simply trained with the sloths, eventually learning how he could use ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu, even kenjutsu, medical jutsu by using it in combination with seals. Upon emerging from the realm, Naruto had learned all the jutsu he'd taken from the Hokages and several he'd invented by combining them with the true art of Fujinjutsu. Of course, Naruto had come out for 1 day every week to set up traps for rock ninjas and soon, cloud ninjas. As well, his reputation gaining with his power. Heck, even the disintegration seal had been improved to the point that it could be used in combat, but only in a tailed state. Naruto had been training with ki for a good 3 years now, and though slow, the sloths had a few good swordsmen who could help Naruto with his style, but mainly they helped him with his seals. However, at one point, Naruto decided to challenge Falivora to a rematch. He had reached 10 spiraling kanji in each eye, and during his training he had learned to control all 9 of the fox's tails, much to its disgust and horror. Flashback within a flashback. Naruto was meditating with ki, and had reached the 8th tail of control. Reaching deeper into the seal, Naruto reached into his mindscape. Touching the wall and releasing the last tail, he saw the entire room alight with fire. Naruto had to fight the Kyuubi, though it was weakened. With Naruto had 8 tails and Kyuubi at the equivalent of 4, Naruto flashed before it, using his Hiruzen variant, and drove ki into the Kyuubi, removing its souls from his body and giving all of its chakra to himself. There was no more Kyuubi, just Naruto, and his 9 tails. Awakening, Naruto saw ki let out a burst of energy and glow green for a second before dying out to normal again. Naruto, now with 9 tails swishing around behind himself, went back to meditating. It took 4 years of meditation time within the realm to gain full control of its power, but Naruto was now essentially the new Kyuubi. End inner flashback, in his 5th year of training, he'd challenged Falivora, but was once again decimated when she reached her 100 eye seals. On the last day of his 7 years, Naruto left the realm and returned to the spot in the tree that he'd been in every week for a long time. However, Naruto was not as powerful as he was in the realm. It did not work the same way as Kage Bunshin did. He only got a power boost equal to half of what he had in the realm, making him the master of only 5 of Kyuubi's tails, and putting his limit at 14 rotating kanji seals in each eye. With the contract in place, and over 2,000 techniques under his belt, along with his own ultimate technique, the blossoming Rasengan, Naruto spent his last half-year traveling from country to country, village to village, introducing himself to Jiraiya's spy network. Half a before, while setting up traps, he'd run into the man who had given him those wise words that still echoed in the blonde's head. You cannot live in the past. It is okay to grieve for people, but move forward. It's never too late to live your life. The man had simply given Naruto a few tips on where to set the traps, and was quite impressed by Naruto's seal traps, and the fact that they weren't simply explosions, but shrapnel, acid, poison, and other types of explosions, almost guaranteed to send an enemy running without actually killing them. Jiraiya had also told Naruto of the political situation, and after receiving from Naruto a guarantee of allegiance to Konoha, the Hokage turned Sannin gave Naruto the mission to kill the Tsuchikage before his return. Giving the boy a map, he named Naruto a special jounin of Konoha, and pointed out the location of various places for the boy to visit in order to get information on the Kage. He gave Naruto the master password, a line from a poem about a certain perverted toad sage that the man had made up himself. Naruto thanked Jiraiya greatly, bowing down to the ground as he'd been required to do so for so long to Falivora. Naruto stayed down for a half minute, before returning to work and then the realm. Or well, He was going to, until he turned to Jiraiya and asked, "Why are you here, aren't you the Hokage?" The Sannin scratched the back of his head before replying, "Actually no. I convinced Tsunade, the last of the Sannin, to take the job when I convinced her it would be in Konoha's best interest. I'm actually on my way to see my spy network to get information on the Dust Village." "You're up to date on politics, right?" Naruto nodded. He'd gathered information from some journal some of the dead ninja had carried, and was aware of the general situation. "Is there any way I can help?" "Yes. I already said how." Naruto only nodded, then returned to the Summon Realm to complete his remaining training. He would need it. After leaving the realm with no intent of returning for quite a while, Naruto then began his mission of killing the Tsuchikage. Much to Naruto's surprise, the Rock Kage was really more of a figurehead, his son doing most of the work. The man was relatively old, and though well guarded against normal and ninja attacks, he was really no match for a Kage-level ninja, let alone Naruto, who could probably take on Jiraiya and Tsunade combined in their prime. Taking a few months, Naruto planned out his attack, and despite the lookout for anyone with his appearance, managed to get a good enough plan done without being caught. Taking his position on a house opposite the Hokage's living quarters, Naruto his himself and his chakra signature. Brining his eyes up to 14 kanji each, Naruto let off an unfathomable short burst of chakra, enough to project 3 disintegration seals onto the guards outside the window. Projecting a Hiruzen seal at the same time, Naruto teleported to the window, and clung with his bare hands to the wall, removing the seal and masking his signature with the camouflage jutsu active. Moving into the building silently, he downed 3 more ANBU guards with almost no struggle involved, putting wind-infused cutting seals on their necks, which had to be done by touching them, and which cut off their heads quickly. Catching the heads and bodies and placing them on the ground quietly, Naruto moved to the next room. Applying a seal infused with the darkness element and the wood element, Naruto adjusted it to the composition of the wall, then applied energy in order to phase through the wall. It had been 2 minutes since he'd entered, and he was getting worried. Taking another 20 seconds, Naruto removed the seals from the other side of the wall, and looked around. The Tsuchikage was resting there, or so he thought. In order to make sure he died, Naruto pulled out ki, but accidentally let a green pulse slip out. This awoke the Kage, who made the ram seal and removed Naruto's cover. Creating rocks from the wall, they began to shoot at Naruto as nearly supersonic speeds. Not ready for the assault, Naruto hid his head in his trench coat, which unfortunately exposed his chest a little. A few pebbles-sized rocks went straight through the boy's chest, but were almost instantly healed with just a little fused chakra. Making ki glow green, Naruto went up to 1 tail of power, contained entirely within the orb of energy that glowed eerily around him, masking his signature from any outside. The old Tsuchikage formed a sword made of stone from the wall and began to fight Naruto, who in one fell swoop of his sword cut the Kages in half, impaling the old man, who shrieked from the pain. Which blew Naruto's cover completely, having not thought that the fight would be very hard and did not apply a silencing seal to the room. 2 ANBU squads entered the room, which was really very large, like a training dojo with all the weapons lining the walls, though they were probably decorative. The squads began to fight Naruto, each slowly falling to Naruto's kenjutsu, even if they managed to land a few good hits on him. Naruto did not want to reveal his bet jutsus for these people, especially since he was still trying to keep this fight pretty quiet, and his best jutsus were very destructive. Eventually finish off the ANBU, Naruto turned to see the Tsuchikage finishing seals. A loud rumbling was heard, and a dragon made of earth burst through the ground and floor, pushing so high that it sent Naruto through the roof. Apparently he's not too concerned about keeping this quiet. Landing on his feet on top of the tower, the Tsuchikage jumped up as well, as the dragon crumbled, and spoke. "Well well, the symbol god. Think you can really take me on in my own village surrounded by my element? I may be old, but I'd like to see you try." Naruto, eyes spinning, spoke in a fearsome voice, with a demonic twinge, his anxiety gone, happy to have a challenge. Bring it. Suddenly, 12 ANBU appeared before him in formation. Beginning their assault, they found themselves confronted by 3 clones each, all missing swords. The combat began, as both Naruto and the Tsuchikage began their jutsus. The Tsuchikage was making hand seals, while Naruto began his blossoming Rasengan, letting out another tail, bringing him up to 2. Finishing first, the Tsuchikage called out his technique, Doton, falling meteor swarm no jutsu. 5 gigantic rocks, each the size of a house, began to converge on the building, while the Kage jumped back as did the Umbu. However, before the ANBU could move out of the way, Naruto completed his technique. Kinjutsu, blossoming Rasengan. 1,000 discs of spinning chakra appeared, raining down through the boulders and encircling the house and the surrounding houses within 200 yards of Naruto, cutting all the ANBU to shreds and removing one of the Tsuchikage's arms and damaging his left leg. What remained was complete destruction. The entire area was leveled, nothing remained except a battered Tsuchikage who emerged from the rubble. That attack took almost a whole tail's worth of Naruto's chakra, but was largely concentrated. With how he designed that attack, at 5 tails Naruto could probably have leveled half the village, leaving none alive. The Tsuchikage looked on, impressed but horrified, and dying of blood loss. Naruto began walking toward him, his eyes spinning as a seal formed on his right palm. Using the Hiruzen seal, Naruto teleported directly in front of the Tsuchikage. Using his left palm, Naruto touched a seal to the Kage which paralyzed him, then touched the disintegration seal on his right palm to the Tsuchikage's forehead. Your time is up. Naruto disintegrated the Kage, then made a dash for the edge of the village, and the trail back to Konoha. Using Hiruzen seals, he was at the village's edge in seconds, and set off, but ANBU were following him. Even with contained tails of chakra, fighting off squads of ANBU was still difficult, especially since they were rock shinobi and were thus harder to blow apart. After killing off several more squads, Naruto made it to the border, where he nearly ran into what he sensed to be his only active trap remaining on the border. Removing it, Naruto continued on, and soon saw the great gates of Konoha again, for the first time in 5 years. End flashback. At the gates, Dawn. Geez, this sucks, a nameless Chunin said, dragging out the word, sucks, as if it was hard to finish at normal speed. The guard next to him merely shrugged, then came to attention when he saw a figure down the path. Hey, pay attention, someone's coming. The 2 guards looked closely, one of them summoning a monkey who raced out, looking at him then returning silently and stealthily. Boss, it's a man. He looks to be about 18 or 19, with blonde hair, a trench coat, black gloves and pants, and a sword. It pulsed green when I got close. I swear, if not for the clothes and eyes I'd thought I'd be seeing the yondaime my father told me about once. He's got pictures of him. Thanks, dismissed, said the Chunin. The monkey disappeared after grabbing a banana from his master's pouch. You know, Konohamaru, we just got this promotion like, a week ago. Maybe we should tell someone that someone is here. Moegi, sheesh. Sure, we were rookies at the exam, but we were no pushovers. We can handle this, now let's just wait until he gets here and see if he can enter. They waited another 2 minutes, the 13-year-old Moegi tapping her foot impatiently, until the man finally reached the gates. He had a Konoha headband, and looked to be slightly battered and dirty. His gloves were weird, the palms having holes in them, and within the billowing trench coat Konohamaru caught a glimpse of what looked like a seal, but he didn't get a very good look. The man arrived in front of them, and rose his face. He was cracking a very small smile, but it seemed forced on his tired face. He spoke in a voice reflecting his condition. Namikaze Naruto back from a mission, requesting entry. This shocked the 2, especially since Konohamaru knew his Niken had left 5 years ago. His father said he wouldn't be coming back for a long time. Even though Naruto never spent much time with Konohamaru, he was still important to him, and so when this imposter came into town saying that, Konohamaru felt his rage burn. Naruto is gone, and he won't be back for a long time. I suggest that if you wish to live, you stop pretending and get out. Konohamaru said with all the killing intent he could muster as a 13-year-old boy, which was actually quite a lot, but felt like nothing to Naruto. I am Naruto, and I suggest you take a closer look before you make assumptions. The man said, his smile disappearing. He couldn't turn his eyes back to normal, so he just pointed to his whisker marks. If you think this is fake, then go ahead, try to dispel it. Kai! Konohamaru yelled, letting out a pulse of chakra. When Naruto was still there, he began to tear up. Niken! He yelled as he jumped into his supposed brother's arms. Hey Konohamaru-kun. Chunin already? Moegi too? Well, you've certainly done well for yourselves. Here, I'll catch up with you guys later. For now, I need to see the Hokage. Heh, okay Niken. Just sign in here and go ahead. The young Chunin said, drying his tears. Naruto signed, then ruffled Konohamaru's hair and left in a flash, creating Hiruzen seals with set depon times of 1/20th of a second, teleporting across the village and into the window of the tower in just under 2 seconds. Hey Hokage-sama, mind if I come in? Naruto said, as if teleporting around was common and that a Hokage he didn't even know would be perfectly willing. However, Naruto saw that the woman Jiraiya had told him about, Tsunade, was in fact basically covered in paperwork. Stepping into the office, Naruto moved over to her, and found her asleep, a sake bottle in her hand. Shaking her awake, she yelled, Shizun, and threw the bottle at Naruto's head. However, Naruto dodged it and just stood there, in front of her desk, bowing as the person who was apparently Shizun ran into the room. What is it Hokage-sama? She asked, then seeing the unfamiliar man shot a poisoned needle at him, which simply bounced off the trench coat. Whoa, hold it. I'm a Konohanin, settle down. The woman was unconvinced, and reached for a kunai, saying, how'd you get in then? I certainly didn't let you in here. Naruto just pointed and said bluntly, window. All the two women could think was Jiraiya. You have a student or something? Do you happen to know Jiraiya? Yeah. Came by and saw me, gave me my last mission. Tsunade did not like where this was going. And what was that? Nothing much, killed that Tsuchikage yesterday is all. Both of the women's mouths dropped, until Tsunade yelled, you killed Hokage? Naruto nodded, then tossed the woman a scroll he'd put together while running once he'd passed the Fire Country border. Being able to project letters with your eyes is very useful. That scroll, Naruto said, in the school teacher authoritative voice he hadn't used for years. Contains all that I can or will tell you about my abilities. I'm sure you've heard some stuff from Jiraiya, and the fact that I'm not a special jounin, and I know you know about my bloodline. That scroll contains all that I know about mine, and I expect only your eyes and perhaps Jiraiya's to see it, and it contains all my other skills that I feel the need to report. I know over 2,000 jutsus, and I have variations of my father's jutsus, including Hiruzen and an ultimate Rasengan that could level half a village. I also hold the sloth contract. None of that is in there, for a reason. If you need another spot to put me, I suggest it be in the ANBU Demolition Division. I like to make things blow up. If you need me for anything else, just send for me at my estate. I am a Namikaze, I don't think you'll have trouble finding it. Oh, by the way, can I borrow a big piece of wood, maybe an ironing board? Shizun and Tsunade, though awed by the man, kept their dispositions in check. Shizun gave him a quizzical look, then shrugged. She went over to a closet and pulled out a ironing board, which had probably never been used. Naruto walked over to it, and did a small wind jutsu to blow off all the dust, moving it all into the trash can. Then, projecting 6 seals and a new type of entwining seal onto it, Naruto hopped on, put some chakra into it, and flew out the window. Tsunade picked up the scroll, looking at it with interest, and began to read it. A/N, it basically summarized all that I summarized for you in the flashback of epic length. Shizun's jaw dropped, then she said quietly to herself, so that's where those things came from. The Namikaze estate, Naruto settled in, noticing a few battle fans, some pictures of Hinata, Tenten and Temari, and some weapons hanging on the walls of the entry room. Naruto of course had basically nothing with him, all his weapons except ki having been exhausted, and the last of the supplies in his trench coat having been used on the way back. It had started with 4 years of equipment in it, as he had gotten it and the gloves while with the sloths, but because of the extended time with them, it had just made it. Deciding he needed a bath, Naruto decided he'd rather just go to a public bath house. Teleporting there, Naruto paid and put his clothing in a locker. If anyone was stupid enough to touch it, they would find themselves in a very shocking situation, electro-guard seals being placed on them. Naruto placed a towel around his finer part, which thanks to accelerated growth was now about 8 inches long, and slid into the onsen. Relaxing for the first time in what seemed like forever, Naruto just laid back into the large spring. The steam was pleasant, and all Naruto really needed was a nice long bath. However, this was when Naruto noticed a sign near the onsen which said, "Mixed Bath Day." He suddenly became very nervous as to why that girl at the front desk had been smiling at him and told him to use the middle baths. Apparently, there was a men's side, a women's side. And today, in the middle, was both. Naruto was about to leave the bath, when he heard a door open. Apparently, some girls didn't mind the mixed bath, and decided to try it. Growing red, Naruto saw 2 people he really did not want to see, Yamanaka Ino and Mitarashi Anko. Now, Ino had never been too bad, she'd liked him, but Anko was a different matter. Anko had always hung around him when he trained, in the shadows watching. He was nervous, especially since it appeared that in the past 5 years they'd grown a lot, physically at least. Ino was more gorgeous than ever before and Anko looked exactly the same, as if she didn't age a year. Of course, she was now in her late 20s. Naruto found himself staring and growing hard despite his head telling him to just look away and get out, and leave. Gaining control of himself, Naruto did as his mind said, and slowly got out, and began to walk out. However, he stopped when he heard a squeal. And slowly turned his head around. Hello? Using his enhanced hearing, Naruto heard from across the baths Ino whisper, "Oh my god. He's really hot. Can't just let him leave, right? Come on Anko, help me out here, you know you want him too." Naruto began to walk a little faster, but not too fast for fear of looking scared. Wow, that's ironic. However, he stopped when he heard footsteps behind him. Cranking his head around again, he saw Anko was walking towards him, with a slight skip in her step that made her breasts jiggle, even while confined under the towel around her. Naruto tore his eyes up when she approached, and looked her in the eye. "Hello Mitarashi-san. It's been a while," he said calmly, as if it was completely normal for them to meet in a bathhouse almost naked. She studied him for a second, her gaze lingering a little longer than it should have on his private area while scanning his body and face, and then it struck her. The golden hair, the whisker marks, even without his deep blue eyes, he had to be Naruto-kun. Ino was now standing next to Anko, having moved to her side in a flash, and examined him as well. "You're right." Then something unexpected happened, both of them launched themselves at him, bringing him into a tight group hug. Naruto felt odd, having not really known either of them all that well, but remained confused and let them do their thing. When they finally pulled back, Naruto sighed and walked over to the back, getting into it again and began to wash off. "Well, you coming?" "I'm here to bathe, I assume that's what you do here." The two girls looked at each other, then smiled mischievously, and walked over, sliding themselves in. When Naruto was nearly done, he still had to wash his back, and that was when Ino offered to do so. "Come on, it'll be fine, I promise I won't do anything too naughty," she said in a sweet candy voice. Naruto was blushing slightly, but responded with, "It's okay, I'll do it myself." Naruto then made a clone, who was going to wash his back, except his concentration was shot by Ino's advances, and the clone was made with no towel on, revealing himself in all his glory. The two girls just let their mouths hang open, in the brief 2 seconds that they saw it before Naruto noticed what had happened and dispelled it. Bright red, Naruto mumbled, "Maybe I should just go." Halfway out of the bath, Ino grabbed onto Naruto's ankle and stated firmly, "Naruto, it's nothing to be embarrassed about, you're among friends here. Now sit down and let me wash your back, you aren't going back to your house dirty." Naruto, surprised by her forceful tone, simply thought what's the worst that could happen? And sat down in the back, his back to her. He felt her begin to massage his back, and let out a soft moan at how good she was at massaging him. He quickly put his hand over his mouth, but Ino whispered in his ear, "It's okay, I'm good at massaging, I'm a kunoichi after all." Meanwhile, Anko was scheming. Sure, she hadn't been very nice to him when she'd seen him training, occasionally helping out with her snakes, but she respected him now, and felt she at least deserved a fair chance at the boy. Deciding to try to take that chance, she went for the direct approach. She moved up in front of him, his eyes closed from the feeling of Ino rubbing and scrubbing his back, and she leaned forward. Her lips met his, and his eyes shot open. When he saw who it was, he didn't pull back, but didn't return the kiss. When she broke away, he muttered, "What was that for?" but not in a disappointed way. "Nothing," she said teasingly, twirling one of her bangs around her right pointer finger. Naruto was sweating bullets now. That was weird. Inakan, and Kosen. I think I have to leave now." He got up slowly, then walked out the door and back into the locker room. He put on his clothes, and decided to check out the town, get some supplies, and look for his fiancées. Back in the bath, Ino and Anko were already thinking of ways to get in with him as well. They'd both heard great things about him, and since they'd been training together, their corrupt minds were really focused on only one thing, his member. Without Sasuke around for Ino, he was the hottest available guy around. Lee had met a civilian girl who simply loved him for his youth, Chuji had gotten together with Ayam, Niji was scheduled to be married to someone else in his clan, Shino had met a boy from a similar clan that was visiting Konoha and gotten together, the gay couple actually being rather pleasant now that they were no longer all quiet and creepy. Shikamaru was something of a lost cause, not that Ino hadn't tried, and she had tried going out with Kiba, and there was something there, but he was a bit too pervy for her. As for Anko, her reputation made it hard for any man to get close to her, even if they'd wanted to. And so they began their plan to try to get in with Naruto, a handsome, young, powerful in all definitions of the word, rich, and with a great personality. It was this very Naruto who was sitting around on buildings, looking for any one of his fiancées, and this is when he saw them, all three of them, sitting in a tea shop apparently talking about the coming war and himself, and something called What I Want to Do to Naruto, Volume 1. A/N, like how I looped that around, don't cha. Leaping down, Naruto casually walked up to the table of three very, very stunning women, and pulled up a chair, sitting down, placing his elbows on the table, his sword strapped to the back of the chair, and said, to their odd faces, "Hi." They went nuts. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. Guys, make sure to help the author by visiting the link in the description. This is Fox Sage, and I'm signing off.